Good evening. It's our final regular season NBA Deeper Dive, and it's a mess today as far as the standings and the seedings and what everybody is still playing for. A couple of teams out there, there's still some value as far as big picture with the playoff seeding, but most importantly, there's value across the board because even if a team has locked something up, you know that somebody's going to be out there. Younger players are going to be out there, good and bad. So we've got you for the next hour, trying to get as deep as we can, leading you up to tonight's action. Adam Scherer's in the house here at ShipMyMoney DFS for Adam, at Shander Show for me. And as we were trying to figure this out beforehand, all of the seedings and everything aside, the slate itself tonight, Adam, with the 10 games across the board, knowing that even teams that have already locked stuff up are going to play a lot of younger guys, it's still pretty exciting across the board, despite all the craziness as far as the seeding is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, 10 games, so there's kind of going to be a little bit of everything here. You have teams that are trying to lose. You have teams that are locked into their playoff seeding or their lottery seeding. You have teams that are resting guys just because. You have teams that have a lot to play for. So, yeah, I mean, with 10 games, you're going to have no shortage of value. You're going to have no shortage of good players to go to. So, plenty of good stuff to talk about today.
And there's some injuries, too, that we'll keep an eye on, of course. And I think that factoring in what you said is key here because the early round of games have provided a couple of locks, and we're still looking at Atlanta, Miami. We're still looking at Brooklyn, Milwaukee, even out west with Utah, knowing that the Suns have already won. So even if there is a situation where a team finds out, all right, we're locked into where we are, or they're still playing, we still have to keep an eye on injuries as that's huge across the board. So let's jump in, as today's show, of course, brought to you by No House Advantage. We'll tell you everything about that, Odds Shopper, and more, including this amazing promo that we have for you Awesemo Plus users. But let's jump in. As you mentioned, it's 10 games. It's busy tonight. Cleveland at Brooklyn, that's number one. And we've already seen a couple of nights ago with Cleveland out there, from Sexton to, we know this is going to be a lot of younger guys out there no matter what. So Jared Allen had a huge game as well, coming off of a couple of nights ago, Adam. I wonder, just beginning with Cleveland, knocking the obvious stuff out of the way before we dive a little deeper with Brooklyn, where outside of Sexton or Allen, if those guys are good plays for you, can we find any other value?
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland's one team that's kind of tough because we know that they're missing a bunch of guys. They should be trying to lose, but they've still sort of been playing normal. Like Sexton played 30.5 minutes last game. Jared Allen played 35 minutes. Chetty came back. Okoro played 39 minutes. Like they still managed to lose to the Wizards in that last game, but they haven't completely tanked. We do know that Garland is out today. He played some last game. We know Kevin Love is out, so you should get another start from Dean Wade. Chetty Osman returned to the lineup last game. He's not on the injury report, so I'm assuming that you get another start from Chetty. In terms of DFS and value, I don't think it's the best team to go to unless we do get more guys ruled out between now and lock. But assuming that they do play Sexton and they play Allen, those guys are soaking up some minutes and they're relatively expensive, so they're not going to look that great here outside of just kind of tournament flyers. Dean Wade's a reasonable value, but I think you're going to get just better value elsewhere from teams that are more shorthanded. Okoro's price tag has come up, so really I think not a very appealing team here, just because as of right now they're still playing enough of their regular guys that it's hard to prioritize the value pieces.
I would imagine that the position, at least with Allen, would be the beneficial, like with the actual matchup to take advantage of. But 6,900 for a guy like that across 9 other games on the slate, another team in Brooklyn as well. I imagine that's just too much overall.
Yeah, like he's someone that I think if you're playing a lot of tournament lineups, you get some of him at low ownership. I think that's fine. He did play 35 minutes last game. Like I said, it's a good matchup against his former team. All that looks good. But I think in terms of just, trying to pick out the best centers on the slate, it's going to be tough to get there. If you are looking for value, one guy that I guess has some appeal, but again, not something you're going to be overly confident in, is Jeremiah Martin. Did play. He didn't play in the first half last game, but he played about 11 minutes in the second half where Darius Garland didn't play. Now we know Garland's out tonight. If you get something like 22 minutes from Jeremiah Martin at 3K, that's reasonable. But, again, I don't think you should be going too crazy to get Jeremiah Martin into your lineups.
All right, so let's flip it now because clearly there's going to be value here with Brooklyn and, trying to figure out how long each of the big three are going to play. We saw the minutes under 30 for everybody. James Harden right there at the top. I see 10-5 on DraftKings. The other two guys aren't even at 10,000. So is Harden simply too much, not knowing the return that you're going to get in this game, Adam?
I think so. I would feel a little bit differently if this were another smaller slate like we had yesterday.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of reasonable to take shots on him yesterday, but there's a couple things that are concerning here. For one, we know that when all three of Durant, Harden, and Irving play, their average production comes down, and Harden's not exactly cheap. The other concern, though, is that we know Steve Nash wanted to rest Harden today, but they haven't locked up their seed. So if they win this game, they need to win this game. If they win and Milwaukee loses, then they get the 2 seed. But they're playing a really bad Cleveland team that is looking to lose. So even though Brooklyn needs to win this game, there's a very good chance that this game is, a 20, 25-point game after 3 quarters, and Harden still plays fewer minutes than normal. Like, they should be able to beat the Cavs by playing their main 3 guys, let's say 30 minutes instead of 36. So I wouldn't be surprised if you just saw shorter rotations, even though these guys aren't playing, and that they still ended up not really being that useful in DFS.
Is it just mainly staying away from all 3 based off of that? And if that's the case, then is there anybody deeper we can take advantage of, maybe get ahead of that, get ahead of a 2.5 quarters of action for somebody else who normally wouldn't get that time?
Yeah, I mean, I would expect a rotation pretty similar to what we saw yesterday against Chicago. Okay. That was a game where it ended up being a 14-point win, but the rotations were just shorter. Like in the first half, Durant played about 30 minutes or so, maybe like 31 minutes. James Harden played a total of 25 minutes in the game. None of the players on Brooklyn reached 30 minutes yesterday. And even if you gave them the few minutes of garbage time, you get like 31, 32 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw similar rotations today. Where you can look, though, I think, is to Nick Claxton, who we talked about some yesterday.
Yep.
He came out, played another 25.5 minutes. He's still 3,300 on DraftKings. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy this year. And he's someone that they have an incentive to get minutes sort of regardless of what the score looks like. Like if this is a competitive game, Claxton should play his normal minutes. If it's not a competitive game, Claxton should still play his normal minutes. So I think he looks pretty good. I think there's still a little bit of value on Bruce Brown, assuming he remains in the starting lineup as well. But the guy that stands out the most to me is definitely Claxton.
Anything in a similar vein with a guy like Landry Shamet, where it's just a matter of getting some offense, especially if you know that team has gone to the bench. He, at the very least, would be getting a lot of minutes in that second half. Again, it's a risk, so I recognize it. But also, I look at the tag at 3,600, and I wonder if that may be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Shamet, I think, is if this game were a blowout, I don't think he's really getting garbage time minutes. Like, I think he would just get more run for guys like Mike James, Tyler Johnson, TLC, Alize Johnson. Like, Shamet's one of their, normal rotation pieces, even though he comes off the bench. So, I would think that you're probably getting around the 26 minutes you got from Shamet yesterday, one way or the other. Like if this game, is over after 3 quarters, I'd be kind of surprised if Shamet's one of the guys that they run the entire 4th.
All right, just to recap here, I see Bruce Brown with a question mark a couple of times over. Yes, Adam has hit that as far as a deeper play there. So we'll move on. Our second game, the Magic here in Philadelphia. And I know that at least a top 3 or 4 guys on Philadelphia at least have some letter next to their name. The Orlando Magic miserable at the bottom end of the standings. We remind you, of course, to smash that like, share, subscribe. You don't want to miss what we're doing here, but it's not just the content on Awesemo.com. It's our DFS giveaways, our promos, everything you want to be in the know about. So share, hit that notification bell as well so you never miss a moment of content, especially as you're getting ready for a night as crazy and as wild as the final day of the regular season with that final night slate. You want to make sure you don't miss anything Adam is saying. And we'll tell you all about Awesemo Plus as well, where you can jump on at $29.95 and even a reduced package here for the NBA. So we can get, again, with this road squad, and I guess a lot of it is predicated on the matchup here, especially on the assumption that if anybody in Philadelphia plays, it won't be long. And that's a big if, because I don't really know if you can count so much on that. So let's start with Orlando, who for the most part, I guess, Adam, is going to be going up against bench back-end guys for the Sixers.
Yeah, but the pricing on Orlando is the issue here, combined with the fact that they're running a pretty deep rotation. We saw these 2 teams play in their last game, and The Magic played 10. They played 11 guys in the first half. 10 guys basically were in the rotation. Dante Hall picked up 2 minutes at the end of the half. But the salaries have come up, and for the most part, they don't have very productive players either. Like on a per minute basis, Wendell Carter produces at a pretty high rate. Mo Bamba produces at a high rate, but the salaries come up on Bamba to 6,800 from 5K or 5,500 a couple of weeks ago. Wendell Carter Jr. is reasonably priced, but you're probably getting like 25 minutes from him. Cole Anthony's prices come up. Iggy Brazdeikis played a bunch of minutes last game, but the thing to pay attention to there, he played 31 and a half minutes. He played the final like 21 and change of the first half. Mo Wagner picked up 3 fouls in the first 2 minutes and 43 seconds of that game. Brazdeikis subbed in and played the rest of the first half. That's not something you can expect to happen today. It's much more likely that you get something like 24 minutes from Brazdeikis, 24 minutes from Wagner, or something like that. It's just a mess here because Orlando's playing so many guys, and for the most part, they're not very good fantasy producers.
4,000 for Gary Harris. Any interest on that?
No.
Fair enough. Look, I'm not going to push.
Gary Harris played 15 minutes last game. Like I would assume he's one of the guys that plays the least on Orlando today,
which says a lot in this situation. Look, we've got a lot of games tonight, so I'm not going to force anything down with Orlando by any means. On the flip side, I'll just say it because I don't know how much you can count on the top guys, but this head coach is going to use tonight, as much as possible to get guys like Tyrese Maxey and Doc Rivers as many minutes as possible. So he would be a guy I would keep a strong eye on. But let's start at the top. How do you even look at Joel Embiid as playable, Adam, knowing that even when he was out last game, it wasn't really much at all?
I don't. I mean, it's like if you wanted to make an argument for Embiid, it's that maybe Doc Rivers loses his mind and plays him 32 minutes tonight. There's a non-zero chance that happens, I guess. But realistically, it's not going to happen. I mean, I expect a similar rotation to what we saw in the last game. Embiid played 22 and a half minutes. The game blew out, but this game probably will blow out again today. Orlando has no reason Orlando wants to lose. They have no reason to try and win this game. The Sixers have no reason to play Embiid or Harris or Simmons more minutes than they need to. Embiid played about 16 first half minutes in that game, but we've seen, the Sixers just running shorter rotations for these guys. And the other thing, I mentioned it, I think the last time that they played, I'd feel a little bit differently if, like, let's say Harris and Simmons sat and Embiid played, like, for some reason. I don't know why that would ever happen, but let's say that happened. You could at least say, like, okay, in the 25 minutes Embiid plays, he's like the entire offense. But with all these guys playing, there's the most likely outcome is they all just dominate the Magic. They all have, relatively productive games on a per minute basis, but come nowhere close to paying off their salaries. And on a 10-game slate, I just don't really see the reason to go there.
Yeah, and I'm starting to apply that line of thinking elsewhere. And Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Danny Green, Seth Curry. I mean, Curry and Green, you could argue, even when everybody's playing, are risky plays. So I don't know where else to go outside of Mac. Now, I love Maxey tonight, as you and I have talked about this winding down regular season mode, but I don't know if there's another guy that jumps out as a strong play tonight outside of Maxey, knowing that regardless of the game tempo, the situation, Maxey's going to be out there a lot.
Yeah, it's tough. You look at, like, we have the script of what it looks like in the most likely game flow that we get tonight. The Sixers in that last game played 14 guys at least 4 minutes. They didn't play anyone more than 26.4. That was Ben Simmons. Maxey played 22.9 off the bench. He played the entire fourth quarter of the blowout. He was the only guy that played the entire fourth quarter. So, I think Maxey's still risky at 3,900 because he's probably going to get like 22 to 24 minutes, but he at least has an upside there. And he is someone, like you were saying, that the Sixers have incentive to get him garbage minutes. Guys like Milton, Korkmaz, Mike Scott, it's a little bit less likely that they get all the garbage run, whereas Maxey most likely will. So if I have to play someone from the Sixers, I would go to Maxey. But overall, I just think it's a pretty unappealing team because I think you just mostly get a lot of guys playing like 22 to 24 minutes.
Don't play Mike Scott, please.
Yeah, don't play.
Nope, nobody out there. You're the analyst, but I can jump in and tell everybody not to play Mike Scott. You're okay with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, fair enough. The show today, of course, brought to you by No House Advantage. We'll tell you a lot about that, but as mentioned, what's happening here with Awesemo Plus, especially for all of you DFS NBA players, right? You want to make sure that you're up to date with everything we're doing in the NBA. So here's what you can do. If you're new to Awesemo Plus, you can jump on this fantastic promo that we have for Awesemo Plus Platinum. It's Gold Rush. That's it. That's the only thing you need to use as far as a promo code. It's all one word, all caps. Use Gold Rush for a promo to get 25% off Awesemo Plus Platinum. So already using Awesemo Plus, you want to make sure that you're using everything else that we have available to you across the board, and that's Awesemo Plus Platinum. Just use, again, the promo code is Gold Rush, and you better jump on, get it today. No reason why you should be not using, I should say, everything that we have available to you is what we have here, from Adam's insights to everything that Alex has provided on the site and more. All right, so let's move. Again, we were talking about situations here. Houston, clearly, they know their situation. On the flip side, Atlanta hosting this game, so still needing to win with Miami on their heels. Nothing really locked up yet, and we'll get to Miami coming up in that following game. But just looking at Houston on the road, trying to deal with a team in Atlanta that we know, Adam, is playing. Wood out, a couple of guys, Porter out. So we already know at the top who is out. Is there any value here at all with Houston, especially knowing how fast they play last game of the season?
Yeah, and we know that they're going to play their younger guys big minutes, and you also still have pretty affordable pricing on some of these guys. Christian Wood, like you said, is out again, so Kelly Olynyk should just be the offense. We've seen him just play really, really well with Houston. He played 31.3 minutes last game. I think that you can count on around 30 minutes from Olynyk. We've seen that fluctuate a little bit in recent games, but it was partly due to, for example, Cameron Oliver playing well off the bench behind them in one game. But Olynyk's produced well over 1.2 DraftKings points per minute since joining Houston. Then you start taking guys off the floor, and the production gets even better. He's been great at getting assists, running point to some extent for Houston. So I think Olynyk looks really good despite a relatively expensive price tag. Definitely some sticker shock when you see $8,500 for Kelly Olynyk, but I think he's a perfectly fine option. Other spots to look to in that game. We know that Kyrie Thomas is out today. He played 30 minutes last game, so that opens up some more. Armani Brooks played another 35 minutes. He's still relatively inexpensive. I think you can look there. DJ Augustine got to 30 minutes last game. He's only 3,900 on DraftKings. I think he's a reasonable value. Anthony Lamb should pick up more minutes as well. He played 30 minutes last game. I think you see at least that, if not a few more, with Thomas out. And I think you're probably going to get Cameron Reynolds, who played 3 minutes last game, picking up most of Thomas's minutes. So I think really you're looking at, as far as priorities go, Kelly Olynyk, Armani Brooks, DJ Augustine, Lamb, and then a pretty expensive price point, but you can still roll the dice on Kenyon Martin as well, just because he's typically playing 36 plus minutes.
Is there any argument here, just based off of how they play and knowing, as you mentioned, that they're going to play a lot of young guys a lot of minutes, Atlanta still going up and down and trying to win this game? Are there multiple players that you could, especially at a cheaper price point, run for Houston, or is it really just more one-offs?
Yeah, no, I think you can use a couple of these guys. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be too excited about just jamming a bunch of.
I get it.
But just based on the minutes, you have Armani Brooks at sub 5K, probably playing 35 minutes. Augustine probably playing around 30 at a little below 4K. Same goes for Lamb at 3,600. Olynyk actually produces a lot of fantasy points. I'd be surprised if you got more than a couple on a 10-game slate, especially because we just got news that the Sixers are sitting their entire team. So I mean that opens up a bunch more value. Now we're getting the Hawks sitting their team as well. I mean, as we get news like this, the relative value of players on Houston goes down, because you're getting more teams that are just saying, okay, we're going to play a bunch of cheap guys for 30 minutes as well, and they're actually going to be a little bit less expensive than Houston. Like, for example, 4,900 for Armani Brooks is fine, knowing he's going to play 35 minutes. But now you're going to start getting teams like Philadelphia and Atlanta saying, yeah, okay, well, our 3K guy is going to play just as many minutes as Armani Brooks. So, like, relatively, Houston becomes less important as we get more news like we just got.
Does that still work at the top for a guy like Olynyk, or does that maybe work even more against him, where you may just see limited minutes as a result to get guys even deeper on the bench?
I think it still makes Olynyk look good, because what happens on slates like this is you start just needing raw points, and it doesn't matter quite as much what the actual salary of the more expensive guy is. It's similar to Friday slate. I did the show with Rinpack, and it kind of was just like, there's a lot of guys where, you look at the salary and it's just like, yeah, that's an okay salary. But then when you build lineups, you realize that you just have an abundance of salary once you put in the best value. So someone like Olynyk that is producing at a very high rate, and we've seen Houston playing him, upper 20s, low 30s in minutes, he's still going to look good because he doesn't necessarily need whatever, on like a slate where you have less value, the 8,500 is a bigger deal. Like you need, let's say 55 points or whatever. Like, but on a slate like this, it's more so just you need him to be one of the higher scorers on the slate. And, there is he does have that kind of upside.
All right, real quick, before we hit Atlanta and kind of move on, knowing that news that you meant, actually, let's do that because there's news with Atlanta, and then we'll go back to Philadelphia and just kind of cement what that means looking at that lineup. But you mentioned Atlanta news coming out with the Hawks as well. So everybody's out here for Atlanta top heavy. Where to even begin with the Hawks to get some value?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have...
Are they sitting Collins?
They are sitting Gallinari, Herter, Bogdanovich, Capella. Nothing on Trae Young yet. Nothing on
Young yet. Okay, so Collins might be the lone guy out there, at least initially.
Yeah, I mean, it on the one hand, it's going to make Trae Young and Collins, assuming they're playing, look phenomenal. On the other hand, there's a good chance that Atlanta is running a shorter rotation against the team that they should still beat. And you'll kind of get those guys out as early as possible. So I'm reading back over what Atlanta needs here. They can't fall below the 5 seed. They need so Atlanta's locked in as the 5 seed because of New York winning. So
New York wins, so Atlanta could lose, Miami could win, and it still doesn't matter.
If New York and Atlanta lose,
you're right. So the Knicks win, Hawks lose, Heat
5.
win. Right. So that's why they're sitting everybody because
Right.
They're already locked in no matter what happens. Miami, a different story there. But right now, at least, well, no, everybody's locked in. 4, 5, and 6 are all locked in.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, it makes it so even if Young and Collins play, they're likely to just absolutely destroy Houston for however many minutes they're on the floor. The risk that you're running is, exactly how many minutes do they play? It's kind of similar, or it is basically the Jason Tatum situation from yesterday. He played 26.7 minutes against the Timberwolves. I think if those guys play, maybe you see them play 28 to 30 minutes, in which case they are going to look like good options because they're just going to dominate usage. They're going to dominate this Houston team. But then you also, of course, get value here. Like you're probably going to get a Kongwu in the starting lineup at 3K flat. He's going to look great. Lou Williams, maybe plays like mid 20s in minutes. He's going to go out there and chalk at 3,300 in a great matchup. So he's going to look good. You're going to get run for Skylar Mays at 3K. He's going to look good. Bruno Fernando should probably back up Okongwu. So he's someone that, you can kind of use as a pivot similar to we had yesterday with Gorgie Jang and Drew Eubanks. So it's, the value pieces here, dependent on the starting lineup, whoever's in the starting lineup, you can feel more confident in. But the value pieces here, I think, are going to be great in the spot against Houston. And then when you're looking to raw point guys, if Young and Collins play, you can look to them just because they're going to be very good, most likely.
All right, so let's flip back really quick with the news coming out that everybody, much like Atlanta and Philadelphia, is out as well. And look, I don't know how much it changes. I imagine that there's a significant fear among any DFS player in putting Dwight Howard in your lineup, not because he might disappoint, but because he might get ejected in the first quarter, right? So even at 4,500, knowing that he's set to play a good 25 at least minutes, I mean, the guy could be ejected in the second quarter, and then all of a sudden, there you go.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's also just like, do they want to play Dwight Howard 26 minutes today? Like why? Right. So it's, yeah, like I don't know. I think it's more likely that you just see guys like Tolliver or
Mike Scott, man. I'm telling you,
minutes. Like Howard, I guess probably plays, but I don't know that he plays enough to really matter on a slate like this. Especially, you compare him to someone like a Kongwu at 3K. Just play a Kongwu. Where I think it does solidify. Tyrese Maxey should just get a bunch of minutes tonight. Why wouldn't he? The Sixers kind of have been saying all season long, like, look, we think this kid's good. He's just not good enough to be in our rotation right now. This is exactly where you just go let Tyrese Maxey run wild and have a monster game, which we know he can do. So he's going to look good. You should get more minutes for Shake Milton. He's certainly someone that you could see them still kind of pull the reins back on because he is a normal rotation piece. But I'm assuming Shake Milton plays enough minutes to be a viable option at 4K. You're going to see Isaiah Joe get minutes. But I think Maxey ends up being the real number one guy here from Philadelphia.
All right, so we mentioned as far as Atlanta and that 4, 5, 6 pretty much now locked in. So Miami has a similar situation where we already knew coming into today Jimmy Butler was going to sit. They're in Detroit. That's a whole different story in its own right, what's happening with the Pistons. So now we just try and kind of maneuver. And as of right now, don't see anything about resting or sitting Bam out as of yet. So I wonder if we should just start there, knowing that there's at least one, really two, right, with Chicago as well, big men that are on the slate that are not going to play tonight. So at 8,300 at the 5, does Bam become any more appealing?
My inclination is no, just because the game doesn't matter. So, I mean, on the one hand, I think there's a decent chance that we just get the news he's not going to play. But even if he plays, we're right back into that situation where it's like, okay, is he playing, 25 minutes, 26 minutes? So if he plays, it's someone where if you're playing a lot of lineups, you certainly can roll the dice because we don't know how many minutes he's going to play. There is uncertainty there. I think the most likely scenario if he does play is that you're getting like upper 20s or so in minutes. He does produce at a higher rate without Butler, and he's in a good matchup against Detroit. But there's just going to be, other payoff spots that are going to look better, and you're not going to have any shortage of value. Like when you talk about someone at 8,300 like Adebayo, this isn't a slate where you're saying, oh man, like I would rather get to the 10K guy, but I'd have to sacrifice something. You don't have to sacrifice anything. There's going to be 100 3K guys you can plug in to get to that 10K guy. So you're really going to have to compare guys like Adebayo to guys regardless of the price, and just think about, can he score more points than them? Even in this price range, I think that you probably would get Olynyk looking a little bit better than Adebayo. So, assuming he plays, I think he's still a pretty risky option. We have Dragic questionable. I'm going to assume that he sits. We know that Oladipo and Butler are out. So, if Hero plays, if none plays, these are guys you can certainly look to for value. They should get a lot of minutes. Looking down a little further beyond that, you got Bielitsa in the starting lineup yesterday. He only played 20 minutes, though. I would assume they take it easy on Iguodala and Trevor Ariza, probably getting minutes for Gabe Vincent, Max Strus. I don't necessarily think you need to go to those guys because there are just going to be so many other 3K guys, but we have seen Max Strus capable of lighting it up this year. But yeah, it's definitely a team we're just going to have to kind of keep an eye on who exactly is playing.
I wonder, just based off of minutes and not really knowing how deep he can play, 4,700 almost too much for Robinson?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's the thing with Robinson, he's not really the type of guy that benefits too much from other players being out because he's not going to create his own shots. He's not going to get more rebounds. He's not going to get more assists because he's not going to handle the ball, most likely. Like you have, assuming none plays, he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Adebayo can handle the ball if he plays. If Iggy or Dragic play, they can handle the ball. Hero can handle the ball. Like, these guys are all ahead of Duncan Robinson in terms of creating shots and running the offense for their teammates. So Robinson, kind of regardless of who he's on the floor with, his job is to catch the ball and shoot open threes. So his role isn't going to change all that much. Yeah,
we're really just looking now and trying to look and basically take advantage almost in a preemptive standpoint of, is Gabe Vincent going to be out there for 30 minutes tonight trying to figure that one out?
I think that's a pretty decent chance, assuming that Miami starts resting guys. One thing to point out from what we saw yesterday, we saw Bam play his 33 minutes. Kendrick Nunn led the team with 36.7 minutes. I'm not sure that Nunn is a guy that they're going to care about resting. If Nunn's in the starting lineup, I think there's a pretty good chance that you're getting close to normal minutes from Kendrick Nunn, just because it's not necessarily an important enough guy for them to really care.
How much is that going to impact then the matchup for Detroit, right? Because you still have the circumstance around the Pistons. This is clearly a team that's not trying for anything at the same, maybe just to lose, right? Keep up with Orlando. At the same time, that the best way to do that is just to keep the youngest, most inexperienced guys on the floor the longest. So maybe, again, as we've kind of seen a theme here, right? Does this change a guy like Saddiq Bey because his price point may simply be too high, 6,600 on DraftKings?
Yeah, I think it's going to make it tough to get to somebody like Bey because on the one hand, he's nice since you assume that Detroit's going to play him big minutes. He's young. He's someone they want to develop. He's not good enough to win games by himself. He's not going to accidentally win one for the Pistons. We saw him play 40 minutes yesterday. On normal slates, that would be, a pretty appealing spot to get to, someone at 6,600 who isn't the best per minute producer, but who plays huge minutes. But on this slate, why are you going there? Like, just go to a 3K guy that's going to play 30 minutes and get another, pay-up option in your lineup. It's still going to be a pretty tough team to get to, I think. Of course, the more guys that Miami sits, the more appealing the matchup gets for Detroit. But the problem you're going to run into is that Detroit's been shorthanded for a while now. So you're just getting these guys priced up to, Diallo at 4,700, Hayes at 5,600, Saban Lee, 3,700 is not expensive, but it's just, why are you going to those guys over some of the cheaper guys? And we also don't have Mason Plumley on the injury report today, which is interesting. I don't really know why. I don't know why he's playing, but he's not on the injury report right now. He's produced really, really well when he's played in these games where Detroit's shorthanded. But the problem, again, is you're probably only getting 26 or so minutes from him.
Yeah, so even looking down here and trying to figure that out as far as where anybody makes sense, because even below Bay, you're still going to be paying, right? 6,600 mentioned for Bay. You mentioned Plumley, 6,100. I don't know if it starts to make sense for a guy like Josh Jackson at 5,900 if you can get over 30 minutes, but even that's a risk.
Yeah, the only thing I really see from Detroit here, at least with the injury news we have right now, like Plumlee's not on the injury report. Corey Joseph's questionable. If Joseph were to sit, it's going to make Hayes and Lee look a little bit better. Probably not still good enough in the context of the slate to be a priority, but they'll look better. The one thing I see here that I'm interested in is that we got Amadou Diallo playing 35 minutes last game. He also would benefit if you were to see Plumlee and Joseph get ruled out just because they'd be shorter on bodies. But Diallo is someone that they're playing in more minutes now than they were earlier when in the season when he first came over from OKC. He can produce at a pretty high rate, and he's only 4,700 on DraftKings. But even that, it's just as more teams rule guys out, Diallo is going to become less valuable.
Yeah, 40 minutes 2 games ago, 35 minutes against Denver the last time out. No indication that he wouldn't be out there for a good chunk of minutes now that he's healthy. And at 4,700, that might be one of the better plays on the board, at least for Detroit, right? Just looking at the price
for
point.
Detroit being the operative word there.
Yes. Thank you. And I appreciate. Yeah, Thibault is out. I don't know how much value a guy like that has in general, but also knowing that for somebody who's been banged up, I just see that on the coming out as well here, Adam, just somebody who's banged up that relies so much on his athletic ability and defense and scoring fantasy points off of that. I can't imagine that he would be out there much anyway. So it would make sense that he's out. Again, Maxey is the guy, all right, for Philadelphia. I see the stream keep updating. So let's move from Miami at Detroit. I think we've pretty much scraped everything we possibly can with Detroit. Miami, that the injury situation as well as just top-heavy guys and the concern of how long they'll go. Finally, we've got a game that we know, and technically Brooklyn is playing. We did mention that accurately, but Portland, of course, is going to be throwing everything out. Denver's at Portland. Denver also in this kind of weird situation with the 3 and the 4 seed where it actually might benefit them to be the 4 seed versus the 3 taking on the Lakers. It's kind of a mess from a seeding standpoint, but I don't know how you factor that in from a fantasy standpoint because a team that is as good as Denver who could benefit from a loss, I don't know how you factor that into the slate tonight, especially with a guy like Jokic right there at the top.
Yeah, it just makes what it does, and this is assuming that we don't get news that the Nuggets are resting their guys. I mean, they rested Michael Porter Jr. 2 games ago. They rested pretty much their other guys outside of Jokic last game, Campazzo, Gordon, and I don't remember who the third, Millsap. Jokic, I assume, plays. He said he wants to play every game that he's healthy. It seems like Mike Malone's letting him do that. The issue and where the concern is assuming Denver does not actually care about winning this game because there are benefits to being the 4 seed as opposed to the 3 seed. If you're the 4, there is a 0% chance you're playing the Lakers in the first round. If you're the 3, there's about 30% chance you're playing the Lakers in the first round. And, you probably would rather play not the Lakers. So assuming Denver doesn't really care about winning this game, you could very easily see the same thing we saw last game where Jokic played 26 and a half minutes. He didn't play it all in the fourth quarter. The game wasn't exactly competitive, but it also wasn't, a blowout. It was a game where I think you would expect under normal circumstances, Jokic would have come back out. You're just seeing, I would expect maybe like 26 to 30 minutes from Jokic. The thing is, with all the value on this slate, if Jokic plays 28 minutes here, he's still certainly capable of throwing up 50-something fantasy points and just being one of the top scorers and being a useful piece. But the fact that we don't really know what the Nuggets, how the Nuggets view this, if they want to win this game, if they're going to actively try and lose this game, what they're going to do, it definitely adds some volatility and just makes it a riskier spot and a little bit more difficult to project.
Well, let's put this in kind of grander perspective, right? Because Denver can easily pull the reins back and rest guys against a team in Portland who's coming out looking to win this basketball game. And the chess match is then putting it on the Clippers and saying, all right, now you do it. you sit everybody and go out and lose to the Thunder, as difficult as that may be. So to your point, Denver may look at this and think, all we need to do is lose this game because the Clippers are going to win and beat the Thunder. With that said, is there now just the assumption that these guys, and Jokic, I think, is the rare, he's the unicorn, right? That can play 20 minutes and still put up 60 fantasy points. But outside of that, you mentioned Campazzo, guys who are sitting. Where do you start looking at where the value meets the price point for Denver, knowing, of course, that there's a really good chance guys will sit or not play a lot?
Yeah, I mean, it's right now, assuming everyone's in, it makes Denver just a really ugly team because, again, my assumption is that if everyone's in, they're still not going to play full minutes. But if you have guys like Jokic and Porter and Gordon playing, it's, of course, taking minutes away from those backups like, Marcus Howard and, Kansar and McGee and these guys that would potentially be valuable if the Nuggets were to just rest everybody. So assuming they're in, but not playing full minutes, it makes Denver pretty tough to go to outside of just, raw point considerations, hoping that Jokic just scores 60 in 26 minutes or something. If they start resting guys, that's where Denver starts to become more appealing. You look back, you had Chanchar play 32 minutes last game. You had Howard play 34 minutes. Both of those guys would look like great value if, again, Denver were to just say, okay, Campazzo's out, Gordon's out, Porter's out.
Is there anything up front, deep end value? I mean, again, assuming that Jokic doesn't play much or if they rest him at all, I don't know how much you can expect from JaVale McGee from that scenario, but just in general, as far as up front.
I don't think so. Assuming everyone's in. I mean, again, as guys start getting ruled out, they look better. We saw the Jokic alongside McGee starting lineup 2 games ago. They didn't use it last game. But yeah, I mean, if everybody if the whole starting lineup were to get ruled out, McGee's going to look good. But I'm assuming Jokic is at least playing. So it kind of just depends how many guys get ruled out, if any, or do they just say, okay, this is kind of like a dress rehearsal type game, like you see towards the end of the preseason, where we're going to play our guys, 2.5 quarters and call it a day.
So on the flip side now, we've got clearly the top 2 guys who are always going to stand out, right, as far as Dame and CJ. Just looking at CJ's price, and we'll talk about Dame extensively, I know, Adam, but just looking at CJ's price at 7,600, that seems, to me at least, a little low on the surface. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, McCollum's played really well this year, even in games where Lillard and Yusuf Nurkic have played. McCollum's averaged around 1.15 DraftKings points per minute. He plays big minutes, and this is one team that you can very confidently say they're trying to win because they have a 64% chance of being the 6th seed, but they also could fall to the 7. And of course, with the play-in tournament, being the 6 has a ton of value. So there's no matchup considerations here where they're like, oh, maybe we'd rather be the 7. They want to win. They need to win. And in those games, you're going to get a lot of minutes from McCollum. You're going to get a lot of minutes from Lillard, assuming that Denver plays competitively enough that it's a close game. But I think these are 2 of the guys that you can pay for. You can throw Nurkic in there too, that you can actually feel confident in their minutes. You can feel confident in their production, and they're going to look like very good payoff options.
Is there a concern that Denver rests guys or starts to rest guys, and now you have the counter blowout, right, where it's like Portland knows they need to win this game to avoid the play-in scenario that you laid out, yet they're up by 25 going into the 3rd quarter, and now all of a sudden you see a little limited – you see more limited action from those 3 that we mentioned in CJ, Dame, and Nurkic.
Yeah, I mean, as fewer guys play for Denver, then of course the blowout risk becomes higher. But the other thing you have to keep in mind is that that's just kind of the nature of this slate. Like if you look at the spreads on these games, the Blazers are 9-point favorites. That's not really a big spread on this slate. There's 6.5 point spreads, 5.5, 7, 5. Like all of these games have a decent amount of blowout risk just because there's so many games between teams that are either trying to lose or teams that don't care if they win, or just teams that are completely mismatched. So good luck finding a game on the slate that you're not concerned about the blowout.
All right. So as far as, and I can't even say it to an extent because it's 7,600 and 7,100 on DraftKings for McCollum and Nurkic respectively. There's value already on there. So normally we try and find a better price point for better value, but just looking down and factoring everything in here, not knowing what Denver's going to be doing, but knowing, of course, what Portland needs. Is there other options out here, if it's a Powell or if it's somebody else that you can go to for a cheaper price, maybe even Cantor, depending on the minutes expected out there tonight?
Yeah, I think Norman Powell and Nurkic, Powell played 40 minutes last game. Nurkic played about 26. You've been seeing 26 to 30 minutes from Nurkic in competitive games. He's 1.1 to 1.2 DraftKings point per minute guy. Powell's been playing really big minutes though. Like I said, he played 40 and a half minutes last game. He was second on the team to Lillard, who played 42.9, played the entire second half. So Powell, again, I don't know how necessary that price point's going to be. I think there's a good chance that you just naturally end up with lineups where like every player is below 4K, and then you have like Damian Lillard and Doncic and whoever. But if you do end up in the mid range, going to someone like Norman Powell makes a lot of sense because you don't have playing time concerns on him. He's about a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy with the Blazers, which it's not great, but it's good for someone that's 5,900 and playing 40 minutes. So he's definitely someone that gives you a pretty high floor for that salary if you need it.
All right, so Utah, Sacramento, there's actually value on the big board for that. As promised, though, today's show brought to you by No House Advantage. It's the best place you want to be outside of any book now. You want to get to NHA, No House Advantage. They've revolutionized the DFS and player props specifically across the board, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, whatever's happening here, all for cash prizes. It's all exclusively peer-to-peer as well, and the playing field's been leveled. It's great. You don't have to worry about value gone. You don't have to worry about juiced bets on that regard going up and down. Everything is locked in, and throughout the day, no matter how much action gets placed on a side, you know that it's locked in, which is anybody knows doing player props, individual player props at any book. That's not the case. No House Advantage on the flip side is making it much easier for you to win money. And that's it. 500 at least player prop offerings available to you at No House Advantage. And on top of that, we have a promo code for you. Use our promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO. That's it. And you'll get $20 off when you sign up your first match deposit today. Again, No House Advantage, NHA. That's the place. If you're betting on player props, if you're doing anything individual beyond just playing lineups, that's where you want to be. Get away from the book. Trust me, as soon as this is live in PA, man, I am all over this thing. I've been waiting, Adam. As soon as it's live in PA, I'm there. I know you feel the same way about Maryland as well.
Yep. Yeah, it's weird you guys don't have it since you can already bet sports. They're still trying to implement that here, and I'm assuming once we get that, we'll also get No House Advantage.
Never assume. PA's weird. We get like 3 steps forward and it's like 1 step back with what you can't bet. Jersey is the Wild West. You can bet on the Oscars. You can bet on everything in Jersey. So I just cross over the border and that's it. All right. So we know because the Suns, now they get that win. It wasn't easy by any means, but the Suns beat the Spurs by a bucket in San Antonio, which means that technically the Jazz could lose this game in Sacramento. I don't know how that's the case, and fall back where Phoenix gets the 1 seed. All of that to say, Adam, that the Jazz on the road are still technically playing to win this game, yet that doesn't change Donovan Mitchell's status and others. So looking at Rudy Gobert across the slate, knowing that they have to win this game, does he become an option at 8,100 on DraftKings?
I think he's an option. I don't think he's a top option, but this is one of those games where chances are the Jazz are able to handedly win it and get their guys a little bit of rest. But if the game's competitive, if the Kings hang in it, the Jazz are going to need to play their guys because they need to win this game. Gobert is, and I think we talked about this yesterday, or I talked about it with Impact the day before, but Gobert is like the one guy from Utah that I'm still interested in, even with Mike Conley coming back, because we saw pricing increase on Ingles, on Clarkson, on Bogdanovich. These are all guys that benefit from Mitchell and Conley being out, whether it's through assists or through increased usage or increased minutes or some combination of all of those. Gobert just kind of does his thing. He rebounds, he blocks shots. His usage doesn't change that much, regardless of who he's playing with. His assist numbers don't change that much. So the fact that Conley's back and playing some minutes doesn't hurt him, and it makes it so Gobert is the same high upside, relatively low floor for the salary play that he's been this year. About 1.25 fantasy points per minute, averaging around 30 minutes per game for the season, but in competitive games can get you 33, 34 minutes. I think on average you get 28 to 30 minutes from Gobert here. But if for whatever reason, the Kings, if this is a competitive game down the wire, you can still get those 32, 33 minutes from Gobert. And he's, certainly capable of going for, 50 fantasy points in this very appealing matchup.
Books have it at 11, and we always go oddshopper.awesemo.com for everything up to date. Seeing it at 11. So even that, there's the belief, right, that these guys are going to be out there for enough time to put it on Sacramento. And I wonder if there is anybody that could be blowout proof to that extent tonight. I don't know if Jordan Clarkson, is appealing at 7,500, knowing that you're going to pay a little bit, but also the expectation that he's going to be out there, even if Conley and Gobert maybe get pulled a little bit?
I don't really see it because Clarkson kind of loses minutes in that situation. Like in Clarkson's best case scenario, what happens is he plays, he comes off the bench, he plays, his stint in the first half, and then he plays like an extended stint in the second half and closes the game out. So he's losing those minutes still. We kind of have a blueprint for what it could look like because Utah did pretty easily beat Oklahoma City in their last game. You got, Royce O'Neal led all starters with 28.7 minutes. And then in the second half, things just went crazy, especially in the fourth quarter. You ended up having, like 13 or 14 guys play, but there was no one guy that played enough minutes where I'd be looking to them off the bench. Like of the guys that like you would never really think of, Trent Forrest led them with 17 and a half minutes. That's certainly not something you're going to be looking to on this slate. It's just, I think, pretty difficult to get to anything on Utah outside of, some shots at Rudy Gobert.
Fair enough. Yeah, because even down low, you're running the risk now of almost half of a game. That's the problem with games like this, right? Where you have starters where the expectation is they need to win this game, similar to Brooklyn, right? Where you just don't know. And if you're trying to get ahead on somebody out deeper on the bench, you're basically just cutting the game in half at best, where the kid may play 20, 22 minutes, but that's at the expense of the starters who had to do all the heavy lifting in the first half.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you look at the rotations from this last game against OKC, it almost just looks like two different teams played the game. Like in the first half, you had right. You had Utah's normal rotation, and then in the second half, you had a rotation, especially from like 3/4 of the way through the third quarter on that, was Trent Forrest, Ilyasova, Brantley, Matt Thomas, Juwan Morgan, guys that, didn't even step on the floor in the first half. So the bench guys that are getting more run than normal still aren't playing enough minutes to be DFS plays. And the starters, assuming they take care of business, aren't getting their fourth quarter run.
Yeah, I'm looking at the other side here and trying to make an argument in my head based on a lot of your strategy. And it looks like guys might just be too much. 7,800 for Wright, 7,600 for Hield. Is there a name that can jump out that even Davis at 6,600? Is it too much of a risk to spend that much on this wide of a slate?
I think it's pretty risky. I mean, the matchup's not good against Utah. You also have the potential for the Kings to, not run their guys as many minutes. The Kings are a team that should be trying to lose. And if you look at their last game, they had been playing guys like DeLon Wright a lot of minutes. But then you go back to their last game, it was a 1-point loss to Memphis. So this is a game where if the Kings care, if they're trying to win the games that they play, they would play normal minutes. DeLon Wright played 23.7. Buddy Hield played 28.7. Neither guy played in the fourth quarter. What you saw was Lewis King coming off the bench and then starting the second half in place of Mo Harkless playing 34 minutes. You had Jamius Ramsey play 30 minutes. Don't honestly know who that is. Justin James played 25 minutes. Terrence Davis did play 28 minutes, closed the game. But you saw Sacramento pretty clearly, they got their normal guys some run, and then they turned the second unit loose. I think that does open up. This is a team where I think it does open up. They're risky, but at least you have the potential going to guys like Lewis King at 3,300, going to Damian Jones at 3,500. Again, these are guys that are going to become less valuable as you account for teams like Atlanta and Philadelphia sitting guys, because essentially what you have is, Philadelphia and Atlanta have their versions of Lewis King, and they're going to play the entire game as opposed to playing, just once the starters go to the bench. So you can look to these cheaper guys on Sacramento, King, Jones, Ramsey, that played a lot of minutes last game, but they're still going to pale in comparison, I think, to the guys from Atlanta, the cheap guys from Philadelphia.
Lakers need to beat New Orleans, and the Blazers need to lose to Denver in order for LeBron and company to stay out of the play-in game. So we know they're playing. At least the team is playing. Injuries, though, are factoring in. So let's just look at the Lakers overall here, Adam, knowing that they have to win this game. At the same time, a lot of guys are banged up.
Yeah, and I mean, right now we have James questionable. We have Anthony Davis questionable. These guys played yesterday. Davis played 35.8 minutes. LeBron played 28.5 minutes. He said after the game that he had felt fine. Davis, we saw it, you and I talked about it a bit on the show yesterday. Kind of, do we expect Davis to be limited? Do we think that he was sort of just as preventative measures, he was sat in the game before? We saw him play his normal run. He played 36 minutes. Assuming these guys play and are ruled in because the Lakers need to win this game, I think that, you can expect James to play around 30 minutes. I think you can expect Davis to play around 36. It makes both of those guys look reasonable on this slate because for one, the matchup is good. And for two, again, you're just talking about so many pay-up options. So many of the potential pay-up options tonight are in games that they don't want to win or don't need to win. If you're going to get 36 minutes from Anthony Davis, he's likely to be one of the just top scorers on the slate, ignoring salary. He doesn't need the 5.5x his $10,200 salary. It doesn't really matter. He's for all intents and purposes, he's kind of the same as every guy 9K and above in terms of salary. So Davis is going to look good. LeBron's going to be fine, even if he plays, around 30 minutes here. And then Andre Drummond played 28 minutes yesterday. He's still risky because the minutes have been so volatile, but he does give you a high ceiling. I think I would say Davis is the number one guy, though, followed by LeBron.
Can you make an argument, and I guess it just depends on minutes and injury for either KCP or THT?
It depends on injuries. I think on this slate, it's going to be tough. Like if LeBron and Davis play, I think it's going to be tough to look to a $4,400 KCP. He's one of those guys where, he's playing more minutes lately, and he's capable of giving you a game where he gets like 30 fantasy points. But the thing is, there's just so many guys that are $1,000 cheaper than him that also can give you 30 fantasy points today. You're kind of just going there for no real reason. And it's not like KCP is likely to sometimes give you 50. That's not what he does. So it's, I think, pretty tough to get there. And then Horton Tucker, you saw about 24 minutes yesterday. Caruso's probable today. Schroeder is not on the injury report today. Nope. So unless you get like Davis and LeBron ruled out, I don't think there's really a path for THT.
So three guys we know, top three at least as far as options on the floor, not here for New Orleans. And I don't know now. You start to look at Alex Walker, 6,800, right? Bledsoe at 6,300. So knowing that everybody really at the top is out for New Orleans, where does the value begin for the price point at least? And I don't know if either of those two guys meet it. Maybe you have to go a little deeper to Hayes.
Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I really like here because the thing is, if you're going to go to mid-range guys on this slate, they need to be guys that can go get you 45, 50 fantasy points. 35, 40 is not getting it done, but Alexander Walker can do that. And there's a couple of things working in his favor. For one, Ingram, Lonzo, Adams, and Zion all being out. So, right. You're getting someone that averages like 1.1 or 1.2 DraftKings points per minute, nearly a 30% usage rate for Alexander Walker. But he's also a young piece for New Orleans. Like he's someone that they don't have any issue running him out there for a bunch of minutes. He had been limited his first couple of games back from injury, but then he played 34 and a half minutes 2 games ago, including some garbage time. Last game, he played 40 minutes against Golden State. I'm expecting that you get at least mid 30s in minutes from Alexander Walker, and he's certainly capable of just going out there and throwing up 50 fantasy points for you. You look to some of the other guys. I mean, Wenyen Gabriel at 3,100. He played 31 minutes last game. Kyra Lewis played 29 minutes. He is 3,300. I think that they are both good value options, especially, you have Wesley Wundu questionable. You have James Johnson questionable. If Johnson in particular, but if both or either of them were to sit, you're getting more minutes most likely, or more solidified minutes at least for Gabriel and Lewis. So I would say Alexander Walker is the priority. I think Najee Marshall is fine. I think Hernan Gomez is okay. But I would say Alexander Walker, the priority. Gabriel and Lewis's value stand out.
The next game we see the Bulls hosting the Bucks. Bucks right there with Brooklyn, where if the Nets lose and the Bucks win, they have the tiebreaker. Giannis, nothing around him right now at 10-7, right there at the top on DraftKings. Let's start with Milwaukee with Giannis, and then maybe looking at another guy or two if it's Drew Holiday or even somebody a little less, based on how you think the game flow will play out for the Bucks.
Yes, I mean, this is one where also make sure that you're going to be around the late swap, because this game starts 2 hours after the Brooklyn game. If the Nets are somehow not going to beat the Cavs, Milwaukee's most likely going to just bench their entire starting lineup. So that's something you'll have to pay attention to and keep in mind. But assuming that Brooklyn, who's a double-digit favorite, is able to get it done against the Cavs, Milwaukee will need to win this game against a Chicago team that is resting pretty much everybody. We saw, again, we kind of got the blueprint from their game against Miami yesterday. Giannis played 33 minutes. Holiday played 33 minutes. Middleton was at 32. Middleton is not playing today. So his absence makes Giannis and Holiday look a little bit better. The thing is, though, there is blowout risk here. So they're very risky. Like there's a good chance, or I would expect at least, that you're getting a little bit of shorter rotations for guys like Giannis, and they're just hoping that they're able to, walk over the Bulls team and not have to play him in the fourth. So I think that there's still a ceiling, because if this game's competitive, you're getting full run or close to it at least. But I think the floor is really low, whereas you talk about guys like Lillard or LeBron or Davis, where like they're going to play their minutes because they might have a little bit more difficult time winning their game.
So I imagine that would impact even lesser guys on the slate, lesser cost guys on the slate, like Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez as well, with Giannis up front, impacting that.
Yeah, just similar thought where, if this game gets out of hand, Budenholzer probably has a pretty quick leash. But, I do think that this is a game you can project to at least be relatively close. Like, I don't think there's any reason to project Giannis for like 24 minutes or something like that.
Got it.
Right now, I think Alex has him at like 32, which makes sense. If this game really, if the Nets win and this game really comes down to the wire, you're probably getting like 34 minutes from Giannis. I think, somewhere around 30 probably makes sense, to account for the fact that they are likely to win this game easily. But Giannis should also just be extremely productive for the minutes that he's on the floor.
Vooch is out. Levine's out. We know that. Bad team right now, out of the playoffs. Young players out there. This game is made for Kobe White, Adam, right?
Yeah, Kobe White should just get pretty much every shot that he wants, and he's not real picky. So I think Kobe White at 6,500 looks good. It's a nice pace up spot against Milwaukee. He gets out there and runs. We saw White play 34.5 minutes yesterday. He had played, I think, 41 minutes the game before that. Patrick Williams had like arguably the best game of his career yesterday. He's another one where I think, the shot volume is something you can't always expect. I think yesterday was like the first time he had taken double-digit shots in like 2 months or something. But the playing time should be better with all these guys out. And just the fact that Patrick Williams is a first-round rookie, they should want to play him a lot of minutes. I don't think he's nearly I thought he was a pretty good play yesterday, a pretty good contrarian option. I don't think he's as appealing today just because there are so many other really, really cheap options. But I certainly think he's still a good value at 3,500. You're probably getting 32 minutes from him again. Looking to Lauri Markkanen, who is 3,600 on DraftKings. He played 30 minutes off the bench yesterday, and probably sees or the same, if not more minutes with Vooch out. So I think this is a team that, as bad as they are, they have some young guys that are going to go out there and chuck up shots. They have some pretty appealing pricing as well.
8,200 for Kawhi Leonard, 8,100 for Paul George on DraftKings. So clearly priced low with the expectation, I believe, that they're not going to be out there long. Is that accurate, Adam?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Clippers are the other side of that Denver,
Right.
that Denver piece where they probably would rather have a 0% chance of playing the Lakers than a not 0% chance. So there's, I think, a decent chance that you see the Clippers rest some guys, if not entirely, at least in game, and not, look to run their guys into the floor. But also they're just playing a terrible Oklahoma City team where if they were to decide to play Leonard and George, they probably would only need to play them like a half anyway. But I think there's a good chance that you see very limited minutes from these guys if they play.
How do you even look at Oklahoma City here? Because even if you look at, right, Baisley at 6,300, so maybe that's too much. And then you start getting down, and even 4,600 for Moses Brown. I know that's a name that's come up a bunch here based off whenever the Thunder are on the show. I don't know how you can get to anybody OKC at all, really.
Yeah, it's tough. They were a team that just because of their pricing would have carried some appeal if this slate were not the way that it is. But given the number of really, really cheap guys that you're going to get a lot of minutes from, it's tough to go to an OKC team that's running a pretty deep rotation. Like it's difficult to expect guys on Oklahoma City to play more than like 30 to 32 minutes. And that's only a couple of guys. Most of these guys you're seeing, last game against Utah, for example, they had Teo Maledon play 31.9 minutes. Pogojeski played 31.5. No other player played more than 27 minutes. They ran, looks like a 12-man rotation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like an 11-man rotation of guys playing like legitimate minutes. So, it's an OKC team that doesn't have a lot of guys that produce very well, and they don't play a lot of minutes. So it's pretty tough to look to anything here.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to try and find any 3K players for OKC, especially based on this slate. So let's wind down here. The final game on this 10-game slate. At least technically we started before we hit 6 o'clock. Let's look at Dallas first. Luka at 10-3. Porzingis is out there as well. And I just don't know, based on them still trying to win this game, because technically if Portland loses and Dallas wins or vice versa, it could have an impact here. So at Luka, just across the board here on this slate at 10-3, is he going to be a more favorable play, especially with news like James Harden out?
Yeah, I think so. He's, in a game where they're, looking to win. He's one of the best per minute guys on the slate, and he's one of the only guys that you can pay up for that you can feel relatively confident about his playing time. He should play his normal minutes here. We can treat this as a normal game. So, I think Doncic is clearly just one of the top plays today.
Anybody else on Dallas, at least at the top, based off of just kind of not really knowing how this game flow would be, based off of the blowout factor, as well as Dallas winning this game, needing to win the game?
I don't see much else here. I mean, Porzingis played 34 minutes last game, which certainly gives him a ceiling. And at 8,300, he's someone you could mix into some tournament lineups if you're playing a lot of them. Jalen Brunson played 25 minutes last game. You could take a shot on him, but I don't think it's all that necessary on this slate. I think Luka's pretty much the guy, and then you can mix in some Porzingis just because of the upside.
Towns too much to pay even at 9,900 on this slate for a 5?
I think Towns is kind of interesting because Minnesota shouldn't be trying to win, but they keep playing him like they want to win. He only played 27 minutes yesterday, but that was a game where Minnesota was getting beat handedly by the Celtics. He played like 39 minutes the game before that. So I think there is risk here because Minnesota could, actually think about things and not play him huge minutes. But based on what they've been doing, there's also certainly, you have to say, at least a decent chance that Towns plays normal minutes. And if he does at 9,900, he should have success here. He's averaged 1.5 DraftKings points per minute. And it would, again, just make him one of the few guys on the slate that offers that type of production and a chance to play in the mid 30s. Again, it wouldn't be surprising if we get news, Naz Reid starting the second half in place of Karl Anthony Towns. That wouldn't be surprising, but just based on what Minnesota's done to this point, it hasn't really been logical. It hasn't made a lot of sense. There's no guarantee that they decide to start making sense in the last day of the season. So you could just get, another 33 minutes from Karl Anthony Towns for God knows what reason.
All right, so real quick, as we wind down here, get you ready for Live Before Lock coming up right now on Awesemo.com. Just on that final vein here, Adam, Russell and Edwards, yes, and below 8,000 on DraftKings that you'll pay for it, but it makes sense, right? Based on the fact that these guys are probably going to be out there, even though they shouldn't be out there.
Yeah, it's the same thing as Towns. You're taking you're taking some risk that, you get some news that you don't want at halftime and they don't come back. But based on what they've done, I mean, they brought Anthony Edwards out for garbage time yesterday. He ended up still playing 34 minutes. So I think I would say Edwards is probably a little bit safer than Russell because they probably care more about just getting Edwards one more full game than they do about Russell. But I think that Russell's not any riskier than Towns.
That's amazing right there. 10 games, a little extra, but we got everything that we needed to get in. And now you get to do it all again, even deeper as you get right up until things lock in. Live Before Lock coming your way. Make sure you follow Adam first and foremost on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. I'm at Shander Show. Thanks, Tyler, producing the show. Thanks to you all out there as well. Good luck, everybody. Thanks for watching.
welcome to Live Before Lock right here at Awesemo.com as we're here to get you ready for tonight's NBA slate. We were talking right before we went live here about me and Eric of roster construction, how we're dealing with this lineup. As of course, as we get news in, we will let you know. But let me first off get your take on kind of how you're evaluating this slate, because I'm looking at this Trae Young news. I'm waiting to kind of see where he's warming it up, because I know as I put in my my crunch, well, at least my first crunch on my 20 max, I've got a lot of Trae Young, and that's a guy that I'm paying attention to. But for you, I mean, obviously there's a lot of value out there tonight, but it's just a matter of, do you want to go to that Sixer value? Do you want to go somewhere else? You know, do the Bucks have anything to play for if somehow the Nets lose tonight? There's so much that we can break down.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild slate. That's first and foremost. First thing I can say flat out is if you're building a lot of lineups and you're building them over on Fantasy Cruncher like you should be, do not set a minimum. Do not set a minimum in terms of salary, because there could be an optimal around 48,000, 48.5. It could be even lower. It just kind of depends how it all pans out. So with these projections that we're putting in, there's going to be a lot of 3K guys who are going to project better than somebody like Giannis, who could play just 20 minutes, like in a first half, or 16 minutes. I very highly doubt that the Nets are going to have to sweat one out here. The Nets with 2 of the 3 should be able to just completely go nuts. But I'm very excited about this slate. I'm not sweating whatsoever. It's nice to be back home here. I was in Solving for the last 2 days, and the internet connection on Friday, I was just sweating it so hard. Feels good to feel a little bit safer here today in the comfort of my own home.
We'll mention Trae Young is available to play. Tony Snell also available to play. That's just coming in. The Cleveland Cavs starters are in: Sexton, Okoro, Osman, Wade, and Allen. So I guess I don't know if you really wanted to get to Cleveland Cavaliers tonight, but obviously, with the Nets, we know Harden is not going to play tonight, which I'm surprised by that news. Especially after what happened last night. I just would have thought that, especially with the lack of the on-court that they've had between the big 3 here, that they'd want to get some on-court time before the playoffs start. So when I saw Harden was out, that was definitely a little bit of a surprise to me.
I just had my buddy Matt Ford. I want to give him a shout out. He sent me a picture of Trae Young boarding a flight this morning from Atlanta to Phoenix, and he was like, I'm pretty sure Trae Young is not getting on a commercial flight to go there and make sure that he plays. So I find that to be very fascinating. I'm going to post that on my Twitter, because that feels like some inside info. That feels very nice to have. So Trae Young definitely probably playing, considering he was on his flight this morning. That is fantastic. I can't believe this picture. What were you saying? He completely just sent this to me.
He was on a commercial flight?
Yeah, look at this. I'm dead serious. I'm serious. Just go to my Twitter at Eric Lindquist. This is crazy.
Shocked by that.
He just sent this to me. Go to my Twitter right now.
Eric, send it to me. I'll post it on stream too.
Okay, I'll send it to put it on the screen. He was like, because he's like, hey, just chatted, just caught the beginning of this or whatever. He goes, look who was on my flight. You got to be kidding me.
Hold on. Why is NBA player flying commercial?
I was gonna say, isn't that like a very bad thing to be doing?
Especially with COVID protocols and all that.
I'm serious. You think I'm joking? I'm posting it right now. Take a look. You got it there, Tyler?
I saw the picture. Yeah, I saw your picture on your timeline.
I mean, that's good to know that he's going to be playing in the game. But also, why is he flying commercial? Why was he not with the team this morning? I'm very confused.
Yeah. Like that's the thing. Like, you would think with COVID protocols that there'd be something between the league and the Players Association, like, hey, you're not flying commercial.
Yeah, this is incredible. I mean, I can't believe this. This is something. Well, okay. Well, we know Trae Young is probably going to play, but like, I don't know. This feels really, really bad that I don't want to like get Trae Young in trouble here or something. Like, I mean, I'm assuming it got posted somewhere else, or somebody had to be like, hey, that's Trae Young boarding my flight. This is strange. Going to Phoenix. Yeah, I find that strange. But yeah, he was going Atlanta to Phoenix. So on his way to Phoenix, I believe, is what is happening in this situation. Oh, man. All right. Well, that was the inside scoop. I've never been able to do something like that. That was awfully fun. But he was boarding from Phoenix going to Atlanta is the sounds of it. So he was on his way to Atlanta And there you go. Enjoy that for what it is. I just find that to be fascinating. That is a Trae Young in the wild. Fantastic. Let's move along, but we got a lot to get to. I thought that was awfully fun. So don't play Trae Young. I bet, because I don't know. It seems like maybe he's not taking it that seriously to be going around. I have no idea what's going on with this. This is something.
Now, one of the things I did want to talk about here at the start of the show is the value that we're going to have on this slate from, I mean, look, there are teams that need to win tonight because of playoff seeding, or there are teams that, trying to help their lottery situation, like Oklahoma City Thunder, Orlando Magic. The Thunder won for, they're 1-23 since April 1st, which is just an amazing stat there. Shake Milton is available for the Sixers tonight, but when we look at ownership and the players that are getting high ownership that are value plays, let's just start with Tyrese Maxey, 3,900 over on DraftKings.
Play a lot of him. Like, this entire team just kind of became the team that you need to be going to. Atlanta and Philly, I find it very difficult that at 4 p.m. we're not going to have a majority of our top players being locked in. But going to both of them just makes way too much sense on this slate. Their projections are outrageous. Their minutes are going to be outrageous. It's a complete punt. As soon as you saw the flood of that news come in, it is time to be partying up on this team. It's up and down the lineup too. You can take shots on just about everybody here. I mean, Isaiah Joe could see extreme run. Paul Reed. We're going to have to wait for that starting lineup. We'll see what that ends up looking like, and we'll be able to kind of go from there. But I'm assuming that we're going to get him in the starting lineup, and that just makes him an absolute smash here today.
Yeah, Paul Reed was actually going to be the next guy on my list, 3,000 over on DraftKings. When you look at just some of the other ones, Lauri Markkanen, Shake Milton, who I just mentioned there, Diallo, Lewis King. I mean, are any of these guys really sticking out to you of, because obviously, Adam was talking about in the last show of when you're talking about these mid-range, low guys, kind of, how many points can you get out of them? But the other part of this is how many minutes are they going to get? Because what happens all of a sudden if it's third quarter, game's out of hand, and all of a sudden, player, 9 through 13 is now getting all the minutes.
There's just so much that's up in the air with it. It comes down to also just seeing the starting lineup. There's nothing we can possibly do. Paul Reed's a phenomenal fantasy producer when he's out there. Has the ability, right around 1.2 fantasy points per minute. Tyrese Maxey 0.9. I don't even know what analysis I can really give on it until I can kind of have them guaranteed to be in there. But it's impossible to believe that they wouldn't be the featured guys that are just going to be eating up a bunch of this run. It's kind of the exact same situation that we had with Golden State the other night in a completely meaningless game where you're basically down to 7-8 guys, and Jordan Poole's just going out there playing unlimited amounts of minutes with unlimited amount of shots. Tyrese Maxey's going to just see an increase in that number. Paul Reed, as long as he's in that starting lineup. I can't imagine that they want Dwight Howard going out there and playing any kind of meaningful minutes. I mean, he is your direct backup to Embiid, but you always kind of get in trouble when you start to say, there's always a case for every one of these guys where it's they could totally limit limit his minutes, and then he ends up playing 24 and putting up 42 fantasy points because he's playing a bunch of scrubs. So I have no problem taking some shots up and down this entire lineup with this team. But right now, I have to assume that Maxey and Reed are your primary guys that you want to be taking shots on there. I could see a case of Isaiah Joe being somebody in there, but not a great fantasy point producer. And now we're starting to get some news to roll in here. We're going to get Miami news, and this is going to be really, really fun.
So Butler, Bam, Noon, Dragic, Iguodala, and Ariza all sitting out tonight's game in Detroit. So let's look at old Miami here. What do you want to go to? Do you dare say, is it a smash Tyler Hero situation?
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Yeah, that's the guy. Tyler Hero has to be it. I really don't even know what else to say. I mean, it's going to be. Let's just kind of look at how it all pieces out. We have Ariza. You said Bam. All of this just hit all at once. So let me take a look.
Iguodala. So I'm just kind of literally as I look at my spreadsheet, it is literally the whole top half of the salaries of the Heat players.
Let's take a look at yesterday then too. I mean, you had Miami playing, so I want to just pull up that box score as we're going across. So Gabe Vincent ended up there later. Bielitsa played right around 21 minutes. Again, you got to be playing guys that are just going to be smashing in these minutes. Like that's kind of the direction to be going there. Kendrick Nunn. Well, it's another place where you just need to see what the starting lineup looks like, and you can kind of put that's kind of how the tea leaves kind of come together is seeing what that starting lineup is and being able to pick and like match the guys together. But no Bam. Immediately my brain goes to Dwayne Dedman, who played right around 13 minutes there. You're going to get guys like Precious Achiuwa who could eat up a lot of those minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the starting lineup. We're going to have so many dudes to be going to. Gabe Vincent, you bozos. Yeah, Gabe Vincent has been very good when he's been given opportunity in these kind of spots. I mean, when they were shorthanded and down to 8, they had so many games where he was just kind of the guy that ended up seeing that elevated tag. But yeah, Gabe Vincent's going to be he's going to be a standout. Max Strus is a guy you're going to be able to take shots on. This just becomes another team of value up and down.
Yeah, I mean, you look at over on the DraftKings side of the equation, 5,500 for Tyler Hero will be your highest, and Duncan Robinson at 4,700. Get in a couple of super chats here. Soul Dope asking top pay up options on FanDuel tonight. So looking over at FanDuel, so we got Giannis 11-1, Jokic 10-7, Anthony Davis 10-6, Durant 10-4, Luka 10-1, LeBron 10-1, Dame Lillard 9-9.
So get very cautious with Lakers. I think that there's going to be, I don't know what it's going to look like coming into that game. So they're directly affected with Portland. They're going to play full blast here on the Pelicans, but they'll be able to watch how that Denver game's going on simultaneously. And if they take the foot off the gas, if they know that they're going to end up being the 7th seed, that's definitely possible. But there's going to be difficult places to know where to be spending salary on this slate. So yeah, grouping everybody on the top end, specifically looking at over DraftKings right now, like Nikola Jokic, I have tons of concern. I think that he's kind of a write-off for me on this slate. Would I be surprised if he got there in 22 minutes? No. Assuming he starts, he hasn't missed a game all season here, put up 59 in 26 minutes yesterday. So I can't, or 2 days ago. So I can't imagine that he couldn't do it again, but just so many better places to go now that we get James Harden off the board. You can just kind of rely on Durant, rely on Kyrie Irving being your two primary other spend up options to go alongside with Luka, who is rightfully getting just a bucket of ownership. It's a really good spot to be going to with him. But like if you end up mix and matching with guys who are all 3K dudes and having like these raw points that you're locking in on the top end, it's just such a solid way of doing it. But a lot of people, I think, are going to be building that way. And 150 maxers will kind of have all those combinations kind of mixed up a little bit. And so I think finding some good guys in that mid-range, I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker at 6,800 looks really nice as a guy to mix in. Kobe White looks really good to mix in at 6,500. So picking and choosing spots to be going into the mid-range, going to be very important on this slate as well.
Guy News God, who if you're not following him on social media, you got to follow him. Retweeting from I guess one of the Sixers beat writers, Dwight Howard back from suspension, and he's taking corner threes pregame.
Oh my God. Okay. Well,
yeah,
this could be fun. Yeah, Dwight Howard knocks down 4 threes in the corner. That'll be a fun narrative. Don't play. I can't imagine that I'm going to have any Dwight Howard today, and I generally would love playing Dwight Howard. They can't be giving him a crazy amount of minutes today. I mean, that's still going to be their backup center going forward, but maybe I do get to a little 4,500. Yeah. No Embiid. He could do it in 22 minutes. He's done it in 22 minutes multiple times already this year, but I'm probably going to be going another direction.
Of course, with the play-in tournament starting on Tuesday, great time to join Awesemo Plus for new users. Pick up the first month of Awesemo Plus Platinum for 25% off when you use that promo code GOLDRUSH. That's promo code GOLDRUSH. One word, all caps, gives you full access to all the premium content and tools at Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and so much more. You do not want to miss this one. This offer is valid through May the 20th. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Of course, be sure you subscribe to us right here on YouTube. We got shows for you each and every day to help you develop those DFS lineups. Barry Jackson, one of the Heat reporters, saying Duncan Robinson will be starting tonight. So there's one of the stars that you know is going to be there. 9 players available for the Heat. Yeah, 9 players available. One of them being Udonis Haslem, who just played the other night for the first time.
Yeah, he really had a fun 2 minutes. He got a lot done. You want to talk about ejections per minute? Definitely leading the league this season. Absolute stud in that department. But looking around this team, I mean, this just becomes another team that I'm waiting for projections to update a little bit here as we're going across. But yeah, Dwayne Dedmon is just sticking out very meaningfully for me in my first run, and I'm assuming that that's not going to change. I would much rather be playing him at 3K than Dwight Howard. And not that Dwight Howard can't get there as well, but I just think that Dedmon and Achua are just going to be splitting those center minutes in some kind of a way where one of the two is going to be very, very big against this Detroit team. Like I could see them just smashing, getting to Gabe Vincent for sure, another guy that I love. Nemanja Bjelica, it's weird to see those minutes sitting at 20, but decent enough usage there. Another guy that they're just going to put out there to play minutes, and he can kind of fill up the 4. Looking at the rest of the roster, I mean, Max Strus is pretty small. Gabe Vincent, point guard, shooting guard. Tyler Hero. I mean, Akpala is really the only other dude that could play some 4 other than Achua if you were to play alongside Dedmon. But it's going to be those 2 centers that really stick out for me.
You know, just when I think of the Heat and I look at the players that are available tonight, I really do wonder how much Spoelstra's going to run out with Hero and Robinson, because those are going to be 2 guys that he's going to count on in the playoffs. You know, that's one of those situations to do. Maybe they run, the first half, and then maybe we don't see much of them in the second half. That's what's going to make this slate tonight so difficult, is trying to figure all of that out. Get in some other super chats we got in here. Berg Boy says top 2 studs over on DraftKings. So we talked about the FanDuel there for a second. Over on DraftKings, so you got Jokic at 10,800, Giannis 10,700, Luka 10,300, AD 10,200, Cat is 9,900, LeBron 9,800. And then we go Dame Lillard 9,400. Kind of go through some of these guys I know are not playing. Kyrie Irving 9,300.
Oh, I mean, I could play. I mean, why not some Kyrie Irving? I don't get that. I mean, I would love to play. Let me take a look. Going through the entire section here. My top guy is like Kevin Durant. I'm gonna have a ton of. I think that's got to be a game that he's gonna go out there and just be the guy as well. Let's see, Kevin Durant taking a big jump up for me once you get Harden off the floor there. But Giannis, if they end up not having anything to play for in that evening game, it's going to be tough to want to get from Giannis to some of these other dudes. I mean, you do have the Lakers in that evening window alongside Portland. I'm assuming the Lakers do have to play that game straight up. They still do. That's their only chance of getting a 6 seed. Denver does not. That's what's so fascinating about this evening section, the 9 p.m. Eastern time game. Like, Denver does not want to win that game. Like, there's no way Denver wants to beat Portland. That would be one of the most egregious errors. And Portland needs to win the games. So going to Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, I'll group them both together. 2 guys that you can just be guaranteed to be getting a full workload of, because Portland's going out to win that thing no matter what. I think also from the sports betting side, head over to Odd Shopper, check out some of their goodies. But I think there might be some value around the boards looking there by going to Portland, because I think if that game were to be close, Denver's just going to punt so hard. They'll put in the trainers and the coaches to make sure that they punt that thing in the fourth quarter and lose that game. Getting to the Portland side of it, they could be up big through 3 quarters, but Lillard, McCollum feel like absolute guarantees on this slate for me.
Yeah. Next, Charles over in the super chat says, hey guys, back with another showdown question for Brooklyn, Cleveland. Should I focus on guys like Durant, Irving, and Allen, or some cheaper guys?
Oh my. Which one? Which game is that?
This is Brooklyn and Cleveland. He's asking about Durant, Irving, and Allen, or some cheaper guys. The only thing I would say about that, Charles, is my concern would be is there going to become a point where that the Nets just don't put out the stars?
Well, I mean, they would just blow them out there. But I mean, they win, they lock into the 2 seed, correct? So they still have some incentive to be out there playing. Am I not wrong about that?
They do have incentive. Yes.
I mean, you're basically saying blowout or not, and they're going to be playing full bore with Durant and Irving there. So I think it's almost impossible for me to not play one of those two in the captain slot, because then you have guys like Claxton at 2,600 in the utility. He's kind of a lock for just about anything that I would be doing in Showdown. I'm not playing Showdown, so there is that. Isaac Okoro, a rookie, been playing gigantic minutes. 39 minutes 2 nights ago. He's about as guaranteed for run as possible. He'd be a part of those builds, but for the captain specifically, it's Durant and Irving and probably nobody else for me.
Next up, Super Chat we got here, best center option over on FanDuel.
Best center option on FanDuel. Let's jump over there. Not Jokic. So you just got Bam ruled out, and I'm waiting to kind of see what that starting lineup is going to look like for the Heat. I'm assuming it's going to be Dedmon. I love going to Dedmon. I also love playing some Kelly Olynyk and Karl Anthony Towns in tournaments. So whatever reason, the Timberwolves just love trying to win these games late when it doesn't matter and they're already garbage. But they've been competitive of late until this Boston game where they lost by 16 graciously. Those minutes jumped down to 27. I think even 30 minutes or 27 minutes. I mean, part of that was the blowout. It's kind of a lost season. Well, it's definitely a lost season for the Timberwolves, but Towns has had a tough year. I think the Timberwolves probably let him go out and play somewhat meaningful minutes there. So I'm going to go to a lot of Cat there. And Olynyk's been so good in Houston.
Next up, Suave says Lillard and Young or Lillard and Luka.
Definitely Lillard and Luka. I mean, I have so many worries about Trae Young's for the minutes, and not just because he was boarding a flight in Phoenix and heading to Atlanta apparently earlier today. That's not a live look at it. That was earlier today. I was getting some information, but again, I think he was just flying commercial, which makes no sense to me. Trae Young, it's one of the dumber things I've ever seen. Again, yeah, I can't imagine that I would want to be playing any Trae Young on this slate, even if he ends up in the starting lineup, even if he shows up there and everybody else is off the floor. I don't see them with being locked in that they're going to let him do anything other than play like 1 rotation, 2 rotations. It's going to be like a glorified first quarter quarterback leading into the playoffs. It's that kind of a situation where they're not going to extend his minutes. So I'm definitely going to the Doncic side where the Mavericks still have something to play for.
Oh, I'm watching that Knicks Celtics game earlier. I felt like I was watching a preseason game.
Yeah, well, because you did, and you saw what Tremont Waters ended up putting up 17, 5, and 5. Julius Randle just kind of running around there. But yeah, it's that time of year. This is the day. We are 32 minutes away from not ever having to do another show up until next preseason, where we're breaking down whether or not we want to be jamming Max Strus on a slate. Like, that's fun times.
Yeah. Next super chat we got here is thoughts on Kobe White and Thaddeus Young over on FanDuel. So Kobe White is 6,100 over on FanDuel. Thaddeus Young, 5,000.
I mean, Kobe White, absolutely love. There's really no problem going there. And it is nice to see, well, where in the world? There we go. 30 minutes that we had from Thad Young last time out. Yeah, both are fantastic plays. Very, very high owned for good reason.
Get a couple questions over from our Slack channel. First up says, how much money is too much money to leave on the table with all the values tonight? 1,000, 2,000?
So that's really kind of a great question. I mean, I'm not setting a minimum for that reason. We don't know what's going to happen with Milwaukee, but I'm assuming that they're going to have nothing to play for. I think Brooklyn's going to go out and assert themselves early, and you're probably like, I'm lighter on Giannis for that reason. Otherwise, I'm going to have just a ton of Giannis if he's going out, and we can even project him for 22, 24 minutes. I think that there's viability, and he's the best fantasy point per minute player on the planet. Like, he's that guy. But I do have spend ups that I want to be getting to. Like, there's guys that I want to take shots on that aren't free, that aren't cheap by any means. I mean, Luka Doncic, Damian Lillard, I'm going to have a ton of. I think there's tournament viability to Towns. Kevin Durant jumps up in a meaningful way. There's a lot of guys to be going to on the top end, and I have no idea which ones are really going to be popping, and we're going to get guys resting. I could see the optimal being 50K, but I could also see it being 47.5. Like, that's just kind of the slate that it is.
Next up, question for both DraftKings and FanDuel about Mo Bamba, 6,800. The last we saw when it came to the Magic, we do know Gary Harris is going to start. We'll be on a minutes restriction. And I know there was a note about Steve Clifford about what he had said in terms of Wendell Carter Jr. and RJ Hampton. Said it's unclear, added that both Carter and Hampton probably will not play. Gary Harris will start, but he will play limited minutes.
Yeah, Harris played like almost no time yesterday. Let's see, what did he get to? I keep saying yesterday as if it was Saturday. On Friday, the slate that I played, he played 15 minutes. There it is. 20 minutes the game before. As you said, going to play very, very limited minutes. Going through the box score here, you saw 26 minutes out of Sindarius Thornwell. That's a name that I haven't said in a long time. A former Clipper, a guy that, you know, if you wanted to play, there's just so many dudes at this 3K range that I think stand out significantly better than both him and Chas and Randall, who would be the other guy to be looking to. Played 30 minutes in that game. You could see an increase for those minutes. Going through that, like, yeah, if Bamba ends up in the starting lineup, sweet, that's great. But he's also sitting at 6,800, and I don't know what those minutes would really look like. It is the last game of the season. Maybe they give him some kind of increased run. He played only 19 minutes against Philly on Friday. He's going to be their starting center going forward unless they were to change that in the offseason or the draft. Like, he's the best that they got basically on that entire team at the moment. It's him and Cole Anthony that they're going to be building around. And Mo Bamba, I can't imagine plays more than 24 minutes no matter what.
So we just got the 76ers lineup in. So Dwight Howard, Shake, Tyrese, Furkan, and George Hill is your starting lineup for the Sixers.
Okay, that's kind of about what I expected. I don't mind the George Hill. Like, George Hill was brought in to be kind of a defensive dude in the playoffs, giving him a little increased run, get used to being in that second unit there. I'm surprised that no, I'm not really that surprised. I mean, he's been playing high teens minutes. But yeah, Maxey was always going to be a dude to be playing. Shake Milton, going to be a piece that they want to have pop a little bit here too. And God, he's going to be very, very good today too. He's going to stick out as a play, high 20s minutes, projecting him for Milton, Maxey. And now I think Dwight Howard, you can take some shots on, but just know that there is risk that he's basically just going to be splitting with Reed. And, you know, if the first half he could end up playing there, he's like the one guy that I would have the most concern doesn't play high 20s minutes out of that grouping, but definitely a fantastic enough fantasy point per minute guy, and getting the security of him being in the starting lineup. I think you're going to definitely have some exposure now.
Of course, this is NBA Live Before Lock. We're here for the next 30 minutes, getting you ready for tonight's NBA slate. We are sponsored by No House Advantage. You got to check out No House Advantage for their contest. Of course, you can always check out the projections we have over at Awesemo.com. And when you sign up, you will receive a $20 first match deposit today with the promo code Awesemo. Beat your friends, not the house. Download in the App Store and win big with player props today. Of course, you can check out all the projections we have for No House Advantage over at Awesemo.com. The Nets starting lineup is in: Durant, Irving, Griffin, Brown, and Shamet.
Yep, pretty much exactly what we would be thinking. Yeah, I mean, I still think you play some Bruce Brown, you play Kyrie Irving, you play Kevin Durant. Those are the three guys, and Nicholas Claxton has to go in there as well. Going at what is that, 3,300 over on DraftKings? Like, that's a guy that you need to be having as well in your pool. He's just going to be a dude who, if he gets any of those, like up to 25 and a half minutes there against the Bulls, if we're trending up that direction for him, sign me up for a ton of him, even at 3,300. I mean, there are just so many 3K centers or guys right around the min, like Claxton at 3,300 on DraftKings that I want to play. He's definitely got to be one of them, though.
Next up in Super Chat, Aiden asking John Collins live to get a full run. I mean, when you look at the Hawks and who we know is not playing in this lineup, but then this question becomes is, you know, how many minutes should we project John Collins to get tonight?
Well, we just got Mo Bamba starting, so that's interesting. I still think that's still too low here. Ask me that question one more time. I apologize.
In terms of John Collins, Eytan asking if he's going to get a full run tonight. I mean, the thing is, when you look at this, there's no Clint Capella. I mean, pretty much every notable Hawk is not playing tonight, with potentially the exception of Trae Young and John Collins. What would concern me is just when this game hits the second half of what's that rotation going to look like.
Exactly. It's going to be garbage, I think. Right now, coming in around 25 minutes for us. There's just so much variability. Like, you can project minutes on this slate, and it's kind of a fool's errand because it's dudes who are going to just get extended or they're not. I think there's a better than 50, I would say probably a 75% chance that he doesn't touch the floor like halfway through the third quarter on. Like, he could maybe start the beginning of the third. That's his last rotation, and he's gone. Is 25 minutes of John Collins without Capella out on the floor enough for him to get there? Yeah, it is, but you got to really hope that he can get there quick. I feel much better about Lauri Markkanen, Thaddeus Young on DraftKings. I think we're just going to get some guaranteed minutes on their little Bon Voyage tour for the Bulls. Kevin Durant, I absolutely love as a spend up there. Going through the position, I just don't see a need to try to be risking John Collins. Yeah, you could put up like on the season 1.1 fantasy points per minute over on DraftKings, but it's going to be tough for me to want to really do anything with that. Like, I don't know what I like. I think there's just better places where the minutes are more guaranteed. You have Kelly Olynyk, a guy that has been playing so good for Houston there too, that it shouldn't be too hard to be able to plug in at a power forward position. You can play him in 4 slots on DraftKings: power forward, center, forward, the forward spot, and utility. Like, there's some viability to going that direction, and I think there's more of a chance that he gets to 30 minutes than John Collins, and I would rather do that.
You mentioned about that Magic starting lineup is in, so it's Mo Bamba, Cole Anthony, Wagner, Bacon, and Harris. We already talked about Harris, going to be on minutes restriction there. And then it's like, literally, as a Magic fan, I feel like I get that notification about every day over the last like 3 weeks. This guy's been signed to a 10-day contract. This guy's been signed to a 10-day contract. It's just like, it's pretty much, I feel like it's the Shams daily tweet about the Magic over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. Somebody said, I am confusion. I am too. That is what I am as well. I am confusion. I don't know everything. And yeah, Orlando, God, I mean, what do you do with the Magic here today? They're gigantic dogs. They're in a tough Philly. Like, even without all those dudes out on the floor, they're not the best matchup to be drawing by any means. I can't be doing that. I can't be playing a bunch of these Magic dudes. Like, if you wanted to take a shot on Bamba getting to 24, 26 minutes, awesome. You could absolutely do that. He absolutely wrecks from a fantasy point per minute perspective, but I'm going to be going other ways to cheaper centers and then paying up for other dudes throughout. Like, at the center positions, there's just so many at the 3K range that stick out like sore thumbs.
Yeah. Next up in Super Chat over on FanDuel, So Dope, asking about 2 different combinations here. First combination is Lillard, Marshall, and Dedmon. The second combination is White, Edwards, and Howard.
So I'm looking at that now. I think the first one I like a lot more. Lillard, Marshall, Dedmon, White, Edwards, Howard. I mean, the Edwards thing is like, that could be all over the map. I mean, he's a rookie. I think they were trying to give him some kind of a push to maybe, I mean, he's like building confidence into next year. 34 minutes, maybe give him some kind of a rookie of the year case. He doesn't have a rookie of the year case, in my opinion, but I'm also a Wolves fan. I would hate to see that getting taken from LaMelo Ball at this point in time. But Anthony Edwards, high upside. Kobe White, high upside. Probably 2 guys that are going to be both playing around mid-30s minutes. So definitely like that side of it. But Lillard has to be a priority for me on this slate. And any 3v3, 2v2 that doesn't have him and has him on the other side of it, I'm going to go to that one.
Yeah, Lillard was definitely just because of, hey, they got to win that game. And if you're Denver, you really don't want to win.
You really, really do not want to win. And yeah, be graced with the Lakers' presence in the first round. Oopsie. That would be a big oopsie.
Like, I mean, it's like, as you look at the Clippers here, who knows who they're going to throw out here tonight. But if you're, because the whole thing is like, in that first round, depending on, of course, whoever's going to be the, be the 6th seed, Portland could end up being the 5 seed. There is a path to that tonight as well.
I suppose, I guess, to play devil's advocate on myself, I'm just sitting here thinking about it too. Like, maybe you would want to play the Lakers right off the bat now, where Anthony Davis and LeBron aren't ramped up. So maybe if you're Denver, you want to go out and win the game and do it that way, because it's like, look, we have to beat the Lakers eventually if they keep winning. Why not try to beat them at weaker strength with Anthony Davis not being able to, like, I'm assuming he could play over 40 minutes. He got up to 39. He played over 40 minutes against the Knicks. So that's there too. But LeBron James, I mean, I don't know what the ankle's like. He obviously sat back out again. Maybe he could play full allotment of minutes, but I know 2 series from now, the Lakers will be at full strength, pending any kind of an injury that's unforeseen. Whereas maybe right now they're not, but that was just me trying to play devil's advocate for myself. I just think Denver loses this game, and they want to very, very badly. And Portland obviously needs to win it. So I think it's kind of already decided. It's just trying to piece together how it works.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's be honest. There's not exactly an easy matchup in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. They're all good teams. By the way, Wendell Carter Jr. has been officially ruled out. Corey Roberson, appreciate you there in the super chat on FanDuel asking about Thaddeus Young, Markkanen, and Vanderbilt.
Let's go. Thaddeus Young and Markkanen are just absolute smashes. Like the Vanderbilt part of it, like I don't think I can be doing that. Let me see. Did I even have any Vanderbilt today? I don't think I did. Let me double check. Doesn't feel like a name that I've been cycling through very much. Why is he not popping up? Yeah, I have zero desire to play Vanderbilt whatsoever. Like absolutely zero.
Yeah, no, I would probably go with Thaddeus Young in that aspect. Of course, one of the things we do love to see over here at Awesemo is those screenshots when you get those big wins where you can get into the Awesemo Hall of Fame. Of course, you got to rock that Awesemo avatar app. You can see it right there on the screen. Of course, all you got to do is place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 entries. Tweet your wins to @Awesemo HOF. Win a free month of Also Plus Platinum. There you see the screenshots up there. We're seeing some NBA winners you can check out there. So be sure to check out. We always love seeing those winners up there when you get into that Awesemo Hall of Fame. And of course, a guy winning over $156,000. Kudos to you doing out there. Josh tell me, and that's not the first time that user has done that. So kudos to you, what you're able to do there. But of course, we're here to break this one down for tonight's slate. If you do have any questions, you can line those up in our YouTube chat, also over in our premium Slack account. As we do get news in, we will break that one down. In terms of some teams that we really haven't discussed about, let's talk about Milwaukee. We talked a little bit about Giannis in terms of Chris Middleton already ruled out for this one. And you've touched on the Chicago side of this game, but is there anyone on Milwaukee that you find yourself getting to that not named Giannis?
You want to start talking game theory? I mean, this is where it kind of begins. Like, if you're going to be waiting for some of these lineups to come out, and I don't think you can write off Atlanta, and I don't think you can write off Philly. And we just got that Atlanta starting lineup, and looks about what we would expected. But there's going to be a lot of pieces that stick out in that game still, especially at the center position. And I think there's a guy like Thanasis Antetokounmpo who has a massive upside at 3K. He could go into that clump of guys at the 3K position. If you were to get everybody resting, like if that game is going to be meaningless, if Brooklyn goes out and takes care of business early, and there's no doubt about it, an hour and a half, so half an hour before that tip. So they start that game for Brooklyn and Cleveland at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And then going over to this game, it starts at 9 p.m. So you have 2 hours. They're going to be watching intently on how that's working out. But right now, the Chicago side probably going to be going more full bore. And then Milwaukee probably going to have nothing to play for whatsoever. So just be ready to adjust to some of that news based on that starting lineup. And yeah, I think Giannis could maybe still start if they just are like, I'm not sure what those you never know what contracts are going to necessarily have certain incentives for starts or for games played or whatever else too. But for dang sure, if there's nothing to play for, I can't imagine Giannis being put in harm's way whatsoever. Drew Holiday put him also as a guy that just wouldn't be getting any kind of meaningful runs. So Thanasis Antetokounmpo, Bobby Portis is another guy that just is a massive fantasy point per minute producer at 4,900. I want to get a lot of him. And then we've seen multiple times where they just completely punted and they've had that weird starting 5 where it ends up being like Britton Forbes, Jordan Nwora gets in there, Sam Merrill can be in there. All of these dudes that can produce if they are playing 30 plus minutes there. And that could be the situation you're looking at if Brooklyn takes care of business. So have a Thanasis plan in place. That's a fun plan to have.
Yeah, Trae Young is in the starting lineup. We also got the Rockets starting lineup in as well. Olynyk, Martin Jr., Tate, Augustine, and Lamb. Collins and Trae Young both in the starting lineup there for the Hawks. But I think that's also, when you look at that Hawks starting lineup, just how many minutes do you want to project those top two guys for? I think
many.
that's where you start.
They're going to get to have unlimited ability to chuck in that first rotation. But I mean, what these minutes look like is just a complete crapshoot. They have nothing to play for. They're locked in. It's basically a glorified open gym practice for the first half. I'm not going to be doing it. If you wanted to do it, I do understand the case for it. I don't think it's completely crazy to be taking a shot on Trae Young or John Collins with nobody else, with no Bogdanovich, with no Gallinari, with no Clint Capella out there. Like, that makes a lot of sense to me, but I think that there's better places to be going on the slate. I would rather be going to the security of somebody like McCollum or Lillard from the Portland side of it at my guard spots. I think that makes more sense to me. I think Kyrie Irving has a higher ceiling for minutes, depending on how that game plays out, but no Harden out there. Definitely a big bump for Kyrie. And then Kobe White a little bit cheaper. I just think that Trae Young at 8,800 really has to get there for you on a slate like today, and I can't do it.
Charles, who had asked us about that showdown contest a little earlier with Brooklyn and the Cavs. Thank you for your another super chat there. He says small field single entry, Irving captain with Durant, Claxton, Allen, Okoro, Wade. Or do you think Durant is captain, Irving, Allen, Osman, Brown, and Dotson?
I mean, you're basically, they're both very, very viable. I mean, you're talking about very thin margins between the two of those. I don't know what the salaries work out to be. If one of them leaves a little bit more salary on the table, go that direction. If one of them zeroed out, don't do that in tournaments, that is. But Irving and Durant, I love both of them. I think that there's very high upsides for them in this spot. They're the guys that I'm starting to prioritize more in my builds as I'm getting closer here. But I think on DK for showdown, it's such a hard question to look at because I haven't done any work on the showdown stuff. But if you made me pick one of the two captains, I suppose I'll take a little bit more on the Durant side.
Another super chat with Paul Reed not starting. Should I play him or is it a good pivot from?
Who is that?
Paul Reed.
I think Paul Reed is still viable. Huge fantasy point per minute production. If you get Dwight Howard getting limited minutes out there, I mean, what do you think? Like, Dwight Howard isn't going to go out there and play 28 minutes. I'm having a tough time figuring out what I want to do with him. We've got him projected for 25 minutes here. He hasn't reached 25 minutes since since April 24th. This game is completely meaningless to Philadelphia. That's why everybody's resting here. And Dwight Howard's actually a piece that like matters to them for the postseason. He's played really good in the backup role, backup center there. I like kind of avoiding going heavy on that spot, I think, but Paul Reed would definitely be one of the strong 3K beneficiaries. And we've seen multiple times in the last couple slates, whether it was Lois King or James, the other dude from Sacramento, or whomever else, there's guys who don't start who end up playing 30 plus minutes. And I think he's definitely viable to be one of them. And if he does, you're going to want him because he can get out there and wreck 1.2 DraftKings points per minute on the year.
A couple questions that I know I saw come in over on our Slack channel. Do want to mention them. Jets World, Lauri Markkanen or Pat Williams in the DraftKings 555 GPP.
I like Lauri Markkanen a lot today. Probably going there.
Swanson says, what do you do if we get Giannis, Davis, or James in a lineup? Is that too much salary for late swap?
Giannis, Davis, and James? No, I mean, they're all in that evening window and you're just going to have a lot of money left over. Like, that's my concern with it. I think that's why I'm heavier on some of these guys. I think you can turn that into Luka Doncic very easily. That game also starts the 9 p.m. Eastern time. So going up against Minnesota, Dallas needs to win that game. The spread's relatively close. They're only 6-point favorites up against Minnesota. So you could turn any of those guys into Doncic. It's just, you have to know that you're going to be leaving a lot of salary on the table. I would rather go Lillard there too. So you have Doncic and Lillard that you could turn two of those three into pretty easily. The opportunity cost, I mean, you're basically saying I'm just not going to be playing any of the Brooklyn guys, they might just go out and go nuts in that first game. And then you might be in a deep hole. You might also get Giannis sitting, depending on how that news ends up shaking out. Like, I'm very surprised at Giannis's ownership, considering Milwaukee is very, very live to not need to win that game. I think it's just the certainty that you get out of a guy like Giannis if he even plays limited minutes. And on a slate like this, if you get 25 minutes of him, he could easily end up optimal if he puts up 50. And that kind of works out for you. But I definitely have my concerns, but I have enough Lillard, I have enough Anthony Davis that I have no problem loading up on those guys. And then if Giannis ends up having to play, if that Brooklyn game gets closer than we think it's going to, I can turn a lot of that into Giannis, no problem.
Mention another one over in our Slack. Iron Mike asking for our thoughts about his exposures. Having 100% Lewis King, 92% Luka, 77% Damian Lillard, and 51% Luke Kennard. I remember earlier in the day, Luke Kennard was getting massive amount of ownership.
Yeah, I mean, that Clippers spot, I don't even know what to make of it until I see a starting lineup. You've got Kawhi, you've got Leonard there. The West is the one thing that all of these playoff positions are still in flux. Like, there's a lot of things that are still in flux there. I'm not sure what the minutes are going to look like there, but Kawhi Leonard definitely at 8,200 and Paul George 8,100. You could have one or two shots on in 150. I could have a couple there. Not really mints at that. There's a minutes upside, but I don't think that there's a ton of incentive for them to be going there. What happens with a guy like Luke Kennard is he just pales in comparison to all this other value that we get where teams are so shorthanded. You get Philly, which is resting their entire starting five. You have teams like Houston that have been shorthanded forever, but are at elevated price tags. But like, price doesn't really matter unless you're trying to jam in 4 or 5 studs in spots. And that's hard to do as is. And a couple of those guys still carry risk to not play entire games outside of Lillard, outside of McCollum, outside of the guys that we've talked about, Luka Doncic as well. There's some minutes downside. So tread lightly for everything today. But yeah, I don't even know what I was necessarily answering there. It just comes down to like, be aware of all of the different pieces of news coming out here.
Another question over in our Slack account, it was direct toward you, saying you think the Hawks finally let DeAndre Hunter go.
That's a fun question because there's guys like this that you can make the case could see like a minutes ramp up just to try to get him some exposure. He got up to, what was it? He played 26 minutes in March. Okay, so 14, 15. He's DeAndre Hunter. You cannot play. Like, you cannot play him. No, do not play DeAndre Hunter. I find it impossible.
James over in our super chat says, he goes, I have multiple FanDuel lineups that have 3 or more players that have jerseys and avatars instead of their face. This will be fun. Thanks.
That's
for
a good sign. Let me tell you, you're doing it right, sir. You're doing it very, very right. Thanks for the super chat. Thanks for supporting. Thank you for all the good things. And I'm right there with you. If I were playing more FanDuel today, I think I would have the exact same problem, but primarily over on DK today.
Of course, one of the great things when you're an Awesemo Plus member does give you access to our premium Slack channel where, of course, you can ask questions to all of our experts here and, of course, talk with the community in terms of any questions that you may have. Another super chat came in about the Mavericks tonight and whether they have something to play for. They do, because actually the Blazers can jump in front of them.
Yep. So they are full go, which on FanDuel, by the way, one of my favorite guys in tournaments to be looking at. And I don't know what his ownership was really, really low earlier in the day. It's still lower than it should be. 16%. Kristaps Porzingis is 7K over there. Like, if you're not going to be playing like that, young 5K is kind of a misprice for this spot. Nathan Knight is jumping up big time in ownership, and I get it, but I have my concerns. Minutes, like, there's enough that they can do where maybe you don't need the 24 minutes there, but in a close game, like we just saw Porzingis get elevated up to 34 minutes here 2 nights ago against Toronto. That's a really, really good sign. I mean, those minutes jumped up real quick, 22 to 34. I think he's going way under-owned. He should not be under 20% at a 7K price tag today.
Yeah. Another question over in Slack. We talked about Tyrese Maxey. There definitely is interest there. That's about the best way to answer that question. Yeah, there's a ton of interest there.
Yes, really.
I know we've been updating things over on the site. Ownership actually just updated 1 minute ago. Maxey still is up there in terms of ownership. Nathan Knight for the Hawks, we're seeing him pull in some ownership as well. But I will tell you, I really like the potential if you want to combo CJ and Dame together.
I do too. I think there's just such solidified minutes there. And for two guys who just completely dominate the basketball, that just eat up all the usage for this team, projecting them for 35 minutes on the top end, that's how I want to be spending my salary. Like, I want to be spending my salary for guys that I know I can get that kind of run from, that I can get that guaranteed minutes upside. And I think just clearly above and away my favorite two plays on this slate to be spending up for.
Is there a play on this slate we haven't talked about?
Oh God. I mean, I'm sure there's a million plays that we haven't talked about. And there's going to be guys like, again, Lois King. How many people rostered him the other day? And now look at his ownership, like 14% and change. And it's going to kind of be a mixing and matching of whom can really pop now. And I think over on DraftKings, like Damian Jones, put him in that center bucket as well. We haven't talked about him. We haven't talked about a lot of these Kings guys. I think Metu stands out because of all this other value that showed up earlier. Sacramento's kind of falling to the wayside. I think Sacramento can play this game pretty close to straight up. We saw those minutes for Wright come way down to 24 up against Memphis. So that's concerning. It was only a 1-point game. We saw also for Buddy Hield, those minutes came down to 29 last time out. That's concerning. So I think those guys are just write-offs for me. But for the most part, those other dudes are just so cheap that being able to mix them and match them. And also, I do like increasing a little bit of their projections so that I do get more later exposure to be able to mix and match. Because I'm telling you, you could get some crazy good Milwaukee plays as well. And we can't really even process how that's going to look yet. Like, it's so hard to have it up there. But if you have a little bit more roster spots to fill later on, you could fill it with somebody like Thanasis if he ends up starting and you get Giannis and Drew ruled out. You could go to a guy like Bryn Forbes, not the highest fantasy point per minute guy whatsoever, but could play big minutes, high 30s minutes or mid 30s minutes if they rest everybody else. So just be on the lookout for news.
Of course, if you're not subscribed to us right here on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when a show is live here on the channel. Of course, hit a thumbs up before this show wraps up here in a couple of minutes. Do want to get to some super chats. Williams Davis says, thoughts on Lou Williams tonight, minimum price on FanDuel.
So Lou is a tough guy for me to get a peg for like what I want to do with. I'm a little bit lighter. I know that he has like basically no ownership here. It just comes down to he's not the same Lou Williams. And we did see him get up to 31 minutes here most recently against Philly, the 28th there. They have other guys that they can kind of like mix and match there. Like Lou Williams will be a part of their playoff rotation in a very benign way. Like he'll play his mid to high teens minutes and that'll kind of be it. But a guy like Skylar Mays, who's getting a bunch of ownership, like he's the guy who they're going to just let go out and run and do the thing. Like it's basically a glorified little, like it's a light cardio session for Lou Williams and Trae Young and John Collins. And I don't think you should be going there crazy. But if you told me at 3,500 Lou Williams went out and did work in 24 minutes and just went nuts, I wouldn't be surprised. So have a couple shots, but don't make him like a featured piece of what you're trying to do today.
Avi would like to know, is Walker Alexander a lock?
No, he is not a lock. But I mean, he's a great play. Don't get me wrong.
Justin over Super Chat, Diallo or Bruce Brown for a DraftKings GPP?
Really like Bruce Brown.
Another Super Chat from Soldo, Marshall, Bay, or King on FanDuel?
Marshall, Bay, or King. So probably King because I get that late swap ability. He's all the way down there at the mid. I mean, they're just in completely different price ranges. Najee Marshall is going to be the lowest owned of the grouping. Sadiq Bey, you're getting a bunch of guaranteed minutes. You can't really scoff at that. But it just on this slate is harder for me to get there when there's so many dudes at the bottom end, like a Lewis King who can play 35 minutes as well. I'd rather make that salary go towards somebody on the top end.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is just tonight's is so much about that late swap in terms of some of these late games of who we can find. Because look, I think, you know, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be looking at that Philly, value that's sitting out there, Atlanta value, the Miami value, that, some of these later games you might be able to find value because, look, in some of these late games, you got teams that have to win. Portland's got to win. The Lakers, they're going to want to win depending on what that score of Denver and Portland is because, look, we both know the AD and LeBron really don't want to play that play-in game.
No. And if they do, I think they're going to go out and just angry, just wreck. They're just going to go completely nuts. But the Warriors should be a fun little matchup. I think that they got it done against Memphis here, correct?
Yeah.
They ended up finishing that one out.
That's going to be
fun.
They were up 15 to third, and Memphis came back, but then they pulled away there at the end. And I am sure there are some TV execs that are absolutely loving Lakers Warriors.
It's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be primetime viewing. I can tell you that much. But the one thing I'll say is we're kind of winding down here. I think we just hit lock, but be on the lookout for news. The news god is the absolute man. He's the news god for a reason. You don't just get the name news god. You get it given to you because you're that good. So make sure that you're tracking him because, I wish we could be on for another 2 hours because I'm going to be just reacting to starting lineups constantly. It comes down to having a good gauge and a good pulse for this Brooklyn game to see how Milwaukee might react. I think that that's a big part of this slate. You could get some really own Milwaukee exposure if that news ends up breaking late. Let's say Brooklyn's up 4 and then they go on a crazy run at the end of the third quarter. And then Milwaukee's well, we have absolutely nothing to play for. Giannis could play his first rotation. So could Drew, but then just play nobody else at all. And so be on the lookout for guys that are really good fantasy point per minute producers like Athanasis, who could end up walking into some big minutes out of the middle of nowhere. That could be the difference between 100K or just mid cashing.
And of course, be sure to check out our sponsor, No House Advantage. Use that promo code Awesemo and you'll receive a instant first match deposit for $20 downloaded in the App Store. Of course, also be sure to check out that promo we got going on, Gold Rush, over at Awesemo.com. But that is going to do it for Live Before Luck. Good luck to everyone tonight, and we will talk to you later on this week as we'll get you ready for the play-in tournament starting on, Tuesday or Wednesday?
Tuesday. It's one of the days. I don't know. The NBA has just got us all kinds of backwards, man. It's crazy.
I know the Western Conference is definitely on Wednesday. I know that for a fact because I saw that on the graphic. So, but good luck to everyone out there. And of course, we'll be in our premium Slack channel all night long. Good night, everybody.